Okay, everybody, we are back. Hopefully, you have found your way over here from the quote unquote pre-show that we had, because there were some problems with the timing that we had with Prophet Azad, and that was my fault, totally my fault. Nothing on his end. It was totally me. I don't know how to understand the time zones because I haven't. You know what? I've been in the flat Earth thing too long. I think I'm like figuring out these time zones incorrectly or something like they do, because I thought it was supposed to be 8:30 my time, but hey, whatever. Anyways, we do have him with us. Prophet Azad is a kind of a up and coming newer channel. I don't know how long he's been around. I didn't look, but it's definitely making waves because he has a channel where he basically takes arguments and then refutes them in a very, very intelligent and articulate way. And that's something that I look forward to watching when he has a video come out. I look at that and go, hey, this is of interest to me. So I decided to have him on and kind of talk about his channel, and he can kind of tell you in his own words why he has his channel and what his goals are. So with that, Prophet, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes,
thank you.
Awesome. So go ahead and tell me, what about your channel and why you have it.
Well, I have it because it just kind of came about organically. My brother had a channel, and I started out Christian, and he was the first person in our family who was openly atheist. And in the process of discussing it with him, he showed me that he had his channel. I got a few links to others, and it just kind of got me interested. So I just kind of wandered into it, I guess.
I watched a little bit about your background. You were obviously raised in a theistic type environment, and your pastor was a creationist?
Yes, everybody in my circle was creationist.
And so we're talking young earth creationists, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd watched you, you kind of take apart your old pastor, and I was kind of fascinated by that, because it is really difficult to go from one thing where you're listening to somebody and totally believing in and saying, I respect this guy. This guy is up there. He must have something of value to say. He must know what he's talking about. He's a position of authority. And then later on go, wait a minute here. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So no, that's just a really fallacious way to argue something. And that's what I see you doing. And that is a difficult thing to go from one to the other, is it not?
Yeah. The thing is, he wasn't my childhood pastor. I went to a different church most of my life. He's the one that I had gone to a few years as an adult, and I had worked for him for a couple of years. But, even when I went to church there, I never really bought into most of what he said, which is kind of weird maybe. But I always had enough sense to know that the stuff he says, if you ever watch any of those response videos, the stuff he says is pretty transparently stupid, to be honest, and manipulative. And even as a Christian, when I was sitting there watching him, I would kind of face palm and wonder what he was going for. I think I was skeptical even as a Christian of him and of a lot of things. I just couldn't quite get myself to call myself an atheist or, openly say that for a variety of reasons.
Now, again, I don't want to slam the guy. You don't even want to name who he is. But do you think that he was doing it deliberately? I mean, do you think there's a deception there, or you think he just has so much belief in this stuff that what he's saying he actually buys into and doesn't actually realize how bad some of his arguments actually were?
I think it's a combination of both, and I think that's the way it is with most apologists. I think my brother had compared it to when you go to a job in sales, you kind of have to sell yourself first and, really think your company's good before you start promoting it to other people. And I think there's probably an element of self-delusion. But I struggle with that because some of the arguments he makes are bad enough that, having known him personally and known that he is fairly intelligent on some levels, he's well educated and he should know better than a lot of the stuff he says. So I think there's definitely an element of willful manipulation.
Kind of the same thing we say when we see some of these PhDs in young earth creationism, Humphreys and Tompkins and Snellings and Austin and all these guys. It's like, wait a minute, they have legit PhDs. They're not idiots. Their doctoral thesis is based upon, most of the time, things they're dealing with like old earth, and yet they just totally ignore all that when they say, oh, well, all the evidence points to an old earth, but the Bible says the earth is young. And I'm going to take that to be the guiding principle by which I go by. And by the way, real quick, the title of this, because you weren't here for the pre-show, Zod, is that I had put something along the lines of puppies laughing babies and kittens playing with string just to see if it gets demonetized. So, because I mean, if they demonetize a video about puppies and kittens playing with strings, then something's seriously wrong. So, have you had that problem, by the way?
I have not, because I've never monetized anything. So they can't take anything away from me that I don't put out there. So,
well, that's good actually. Yeah.
Yeah. My channel is still pretty small, and it's only recently gotten as big as it is. So I just never really thought it was worth it to toy with ads or anything like that. And from everything I've heard, it's so unstable and everything that I've just never bothered with it.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a lot of videos, it's not really worth it. I mean, I would say the fact that I have over 500 videos is the only reason why it's monetized and worth it to me, because I do get something out of it. But if you have, 30 videos, then yeah, it's not. You're literally going to end up waiting probably a year. Well, not even a year, more than a year, because you have to wait till it gets $100. And if you're getting, 10 cents a month, it's going to take a long time, right? But when did you start your channel, by the way?
I think it will have been 2 years. In January, yeah.
And you're just now getting some recognition?
Yeah. It was really slow at first. And partly it might just be the quality has gotten better as I've gone on. I started off slowly. I started doing these little Lego animation things. It started because there was a story about turning the rescue of the Israelites by Moses into a Star Wars story. And I had written that for my brother's channel, and he said, look, I just don't have the time to do this, so you can produce it. And so I ended up doing it as a stop motion thing. And that took a long time. And so it took me time to get on a schedule where I was putting things out regularly. And I don't know, I'm not good at promoting videos, I think, or promoting a channel. So it took some time to get out there.
Nobody, don't take it personally. Nobody is, because nobody knows how this stuff works anymore.
Yeah.
It's so confusing. But I think what happened in 2017, there was a lot of channels coming out, and I think a lot of them just kind of like were helping support each other. And I hate to say it, I know for a fact that GDC did have a lot to do with some of those channels. We're a big audience of theirs. So we like to promote good channels. We like to promote science. We like to promote things that are informative and educational and entertaining. But if you've been around 2 years and you have 1.3K subs, then I think by the end of next year, you should easily have 3K.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Easily. So we're going to monitor that. We're going to get you there.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I only had about 200 up to a few months ago. And then it was once I got exposed to Godless Cranium, Godless Engineer, a few of these people, and then suddenly it just shot up. So I think it's just a matter of getting yourself out there.
That's the way it is. There's unfortunately, like for example, that my channel is not set up for atheism versus theism. I mean, the GDC is not so much atheism versus theism. It's just rational against irrational, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't fall into that whole boys club with the whole atheist community there. I mean, yeah, they know that I have the same goals as they do, right? But I'm not going to be promoted as much to somebody who's going out there going, oh, look, religion bad, God doesn't exist, blah, blah, blah. I like your channel because even though you have those positions, which are fine, you do it very effectively. You do it very articulately, which is the word I can't say because I'm not articulate. But you do so by explaining to people why these things are wrong. Anybody can go out there and go, oh, look at this religion. They're so funny because they believe this. Yeah, I'm not interested in that kind of channel. I'm interested in a channel that can really sit there and explain to people why an argument is bad. And I think you do an exceptional job on that. I think that your channel is woefully underwatched. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, I'm a lot more articulate when I record than when I speak live. And I spend a lot of time writing my scripts and compacting them and everything and making sure every word counts. And then I spend a lot of time rereading them so it comes out right. But yeah, I try to have a point. I have my channel's wandered all over the place, from satire to, just general breakdowns. And I think a lot of it comes from my educational background, where I try to think of what I want to explain to people, what I want them to know, and then how am I going to explain it.
Can I ask what that is, if you don't mind? I mean, we hate asking these kind of questions. Sometimes people don't want to give their background, but I mean, in a nutshell, kind of what is it that you have some kind of education in?
Yeah, that's no problem. I was a high school English teacher for a few years, and that's how I had gotten exposed to the pastor, as well as I had been a English teacher in public schools. And then he ended up hiring me to be the principal of a Christian school that he was starting.
You know, that actually makes sense because, you know, when you break down these arguments, you do it from a linguistic point of view. So that actually makes sense. But how'd you get into the whole science aspect of it? Because you obviously have a handle on science. You obviously have a handle on philosophy as well. So how'd you get to learn those things?
Language and philosophy is definitely my thing. I feel like that is one of the strengths of my channel or my presentations, is just kind of hearing how people construct their arguments and then kind of breaking them down and explaining how they work. As far as the science part, I don't know how to answer that because I don't really feel like I know science that well, I guess, beyond a layman's understanding of it. So
sometimes that's all you need. Dude, I'm a layperson in science. That's all it takes nowadays because, you know, the creationist arguments are so bad that anybody, I think, with a high school education should be able to just wreck them for the most part. Not all of them. Some of them are difficult. The helium diffusion rates and polonium halos, maybe a little more technical, and maybe Tompkins stuff on genetics, obviously more technical. But for the most part, they're not that hard to explain why they're wrong.
Yeah, I step into science pretty carefully because I might have a slightly better than average layman's understanding of science. I mean, just compared to somebody who'd never really gone to college or anything like that. But I really do have potential to go off track when I try to get into the realm of science. So I try to be really careful and carefully research what I do, and mostly stick into the realm of what I know. And with creationism, you don't really need to know a lot of detailed science to effectively communicate the most relevant points for creationism. It's more in how they construct their arguments. Most of creationism is, I think, linguistic abuse and some basic fallacies that you don't need to know a lot of science to break down.
Well, I definitely saw that with your pastor, by the way. I noted some of the things you were noting, that the way he was using these analogies, the way that he was phrasing things, the way he was arguing things was just abysmal.
It was pretty embarrassing. Even by the standards of creationism, he was pretty embarrassing.
Well, you had mentioned that his basically go-to things were Hovind videos. Is that what you said at one point, if I remember correctly?
That's what that's what he brought to the school for teaching creationism. Yeah, was a box of Kent Hovind videos.
Wow.
And even when I was a Christian and even when I was working there, I wasn't a young earth creationist. I hadn't been for years. So I played the videos because, along with being a principal, I had to teach a few high school classes. And so I played the videos because I had to, but we would kind of discuss as a class what was good or bad about them. And they didn't supervise me closely enough that I got in trouble for that.
Well, I mean, my channel, I don't know if you knew this, but my channel originally 3 years ago, whatever it was now, was basically started off trying to debunk young earth creationism. You know, we had conversations with Hovind and Eric Hovind and other people, and what I found was that there are now better people out there to do that. I think Apologia does a masterful job. Todd Wood with his series, not Todd Wood, how creationism taught me real science. What's Todd's last name? Anybody help me out here? Oh my goodness, nobody. Okay, well, I'll have to get back to it. But anyways. You know, these people, they do some really amazing stuff. And even though I know the arguments, I rather facilitate the communications and kind of guide it rather than be the one debunking it. So when we had Hoeven on many times, when he was doing his debates, I enjoyed just listening to like King Crocoduck just tear him apart, or Bill Ludlow. Have you seen those?
No, I haven't. I'll have to watch those.
Somebody explain to him how good those things were. I'm going to mute guys, by the way. Oh, Tony Reed. That's the name I was thinking about. Thank you. Tony Reed. How can I forget? I'm so sorry, Tony. I've had a lot of coffee. I'll blame the coffee. But have you even watched Tony Reed stuff?
No, I haven't.
So good. He has a series called How Creationism Taught Me Real Science. And of course, it's kind of a play on there because people go, oh, how did creationism teach you any science? Well, he's using it to say that, look, I was a creationist. This is what they taught. When I looked into it, I actually learned real science because I realized how wrong they actually were. So,
yeah, that makes sense. I'll have to look that up. I think I probably had a similar experience because a lot of things when I started, my whole high school experience was in church and in Christian school. And so when I finally went to college, it was uncomfortable starting to learn about a lot of real science. But there was an aspect where it got me a little bit more interested than I might have been otherwise.
Yeah, Hovind, unfortunately, has done a lot of damage to the educational system. He's been so duplicitous and so dishonest. And fortunately, though, because of the internet and because there's so many people out there now that can just destroy his arguments, I think his following is lessening. I think it's getting smaller. I think we are having an effect because he doesn't have the infrastructure that he had 10 years ago. And of course, him going to prison had a lot to do with that as well. But I mean, he was a lot more popular back in the day, I assure you.
Yeah, and I think people like him depend on everybody not being able to go to Google and fact check or look up counter arguments.
Yeah, or understand them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Thereof, sure. He has his following, but I mean, you know as well as I do, most of the people that follow somebody like Hoeven or follow Young Earth Creationism, most of the time, they are just mindless drones at that point.
Yeah.
They really don't think for themselves.
I think there are a lot of people on the in-between, though. Like almost everybody I grew up with would have totally bought into Kent Hovind and distributed his material and stuff at church. And maybe they're just a crowd that maybe I've lost perspective of what a brainwashed crowd they were. But I think there's a lot of people on the in-between who, if they can't fact check, just kind of take it for granted or roll with it or think that's the Christian perspective. And so I do think that the audience has probably gotten a lot smaller. I think the internet has probably made that segment of the population smaller, but more entrenched and angry. That's my perception. Anyway.
That's a good way to put. You know what? That's a good way to put it. Matter of fact, it's kind of like, let's say you have like a culture of bacteria and you're killing off some of the bacteria with some antibacterial stuff. Well, the ones that survive, are going to be more resistant and stronger. I think that's probably what it is. I think the ones that are left, they're stronger and more resistant because they have the entrenchment effect.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Now that makes good sense. That's a good analogy.
I can say that from personal experience as well. And I keep that in mind when I work on my channel and construct my message. Is I can remember a lot of what it was like to hear atheistic arguments or satire of Christianity, and so I can kind of relate to what it would be like to suddenly have this huge internet with all this information around you. It's not just you listening to your stand-up comedian Kent Hovind. There is all this resource for fact checking, and there are all these other voices that you're kind of forced to listen to, or else self-select what you look at, I guess. And so, if I had this experience when I was still a Christian and a creationist, I think I definitely would feel backed into a corner and that much more dig into my beliefs and get angry. We
need to come up with a name for that. Obviously, there's the backfire effect, the entrenchment effect, but I mean, that whatever's left over for Young Earth Creationism, we got to come up with a name for these people that have just so hardened themselves to actual science that no matter what you tell them, they're just going to be utterly resistant to it because of the whole. Everybody else has looked into this. They've left. They've like, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's a name somebody can come up with it. But first of all, let's make sure that everybody in the live chat, if you have not gone over to subscribe to Zod yet, please go do so. Take the seconds to do it. The video link is in the video description. I want to see that number jump up, hopefully. I really want to promote some of these channels next year, especially Zod's, Holy Kool-Aid, Goddess Cranium, Rachel Oates, Genetically Modified Skeptic. I mean, especially those channels, because I just think their content is so good, and they're going to be the next Logic, and they're going to be the next Armored Skeptic, I think, maybe in a few years from now. It doesn't happen overnight.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I just subbed.
Hey, so look at all these people in the live chat going, subbed, who's Zod, subbed, who's Zod. No, I'm kidding. So let me ask the questions from the people in here if anybody wants to dive into this. What do you guys want to know about Prophet of Zod? I love that name anyways. Prophet of Zod.
Yeah.
How'd you come up with that real quick?
I thought that was coming.
Had to ask, right? You know that was coming at some point.
Right, yeah. It was honestly just kind of random. I was just stuck to I wanted a channel to dump a few of these videos I'd made in, and I was just kind of lost and things kept rolling through my mind. And that one just popped into my head randomly and it just kind of stuck. I liked the old Superman movies when I was younger, and Zod was one of my favorite villains. So.
Before Zod.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know what's so funny is that some of the stuff that I've seen from other creators, and even sometimes I get one myself, are the ones that require the least amount of thought. They're just like, oh, this popped in my head. That's good. I like that. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool name. It's a really cool name.
So let's ask Zod some questions here. What do you got for them, guys? And by the way, Frank, you're going last, because if not, you're going to scare the shit out of him. And he'll run off scared. Frank.
Wait, what?
You're going to go last when asking questions.
Don't worry, I don't scare easily.
You have not met Frank yet.
Why would I scare him?
But like, what the hell did I get myself into? No, go ahead, Frank. You got a question. Go ahead.
No, I don't have a question. I was just wondering, like, why would I scare him?
Because you asked some really, really in-depth questions that might take an hour to get to. So
I don't have any right now.
you got nothing?
Well,
you got nothing for Zod?
I do. I saw your first video is why I'm an atheist. What made you start your channel, and why did you choose this particular subject?
The subject of atheism?
Yeah.
Just because that was, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, but basically my brother had a channel, and as soon as he found out I was an atheist, he showed it to me. He'd kept it a secret from our family and everybody.
Do they know
just
now?
as I have to this point. No, they don't.
Okay.
Yeah, my
Now,
kids
how do they
know.
not know? I mean, you've
and a few
showed
other
your
people do,
face
but-
before. I mean, I've seen in your video, you kind of like, that is you, right?
Yes.
So how do they not know about you then? They just don't want you to?
The big thing is I've shown my face a few times, but I have never connected my name to it. So as far as I know, unless
Your
I'm
voice
just
is pretty
naive, I'm not
recognizable.
searchable.
It's distinct. If they ever like started watching atheist videos and you're...
Well, I count on the fact that they're not going to stumble on to an atheist video on YouTube. If they did, I wouldn't be really distressed about it. And my kids all know about it as well, so I'm not under the illusion that this is going to be a well-kept secret forever. They're not going to shun me. They know I'm an atheist. They might be a little bit upset by what I have to say or how I say it. But my bigger concern is, at least one of my brothers especially, and probably the rest of my family, even though he's expressed it most, it takes them getting used to my whole perspective. And so they're still processing that. And I would just prefer for their comfort that they don't have to deal with hearing me say some of the things I do before they have to.
That makes sense. Now let me ask you, one quick.
I was just wondering, what gave you the idea to do the rap thing? Those types of videos that you have.
I would never imagine myself rapping under any circumstances. But another YouTuber named Godless Geezer, he suggested it to me. He just said, "Hey, this would be funny. Why don't you try it?" And so
it works quite well.
What's that?
It works really well. I like it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm just. I would have never thought I'd do anything like that, but I told him, "Okay, I'll try writing this down and seeing if it can work." And stuff started coming into my head. I've gotten suggestions that it would be a lot better. I've held off on it for now for a few reasons, but some people have told me it'd be better if I was able to get it to a beat, which I have no musical expertise at all. But
we got people in there that can help you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a guy helping me.
G-Man, he's got mad skills rapping.
I
almost got that out without laughing. Sorry, I tried. It was an attempt there.
Yeah, I have a guy. Johnny Drive-By is his name. He set me up with a couple beats, and I'm going to try to. It's more an issue of me being able to follow a beat versus just say stuff. So hopefully I can make that work out.
I kind of like it the way you do it, because without the beat or whatever, it just seems to have a better flow, even because maybe in some ways that putting it to a beat may kind of hinder you in some way. As it stands, I like the way that you say it with the visuals. I think it works really well that way.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
So what do you say your channel is more set up for? Is it more a promotion of atheism, promotion of science, just promotion of rational thought? I mean, in your own words, what is your main agenda?
Well, the thing I value most is just rational thought. And I've had this as a conversation with some of my kids because they're back and forth between religion and atheism a little bit as they're processing everything. But I just tell them, as long as you think through things well and have good reasons for what you do and are decent to other people, that's what I value. But it's targeted more at atheism and specifically fundamentalist Christianity, just because that's what I've had most experience with. Go ahead.
Well, my question is actually along the lines, like, so you were raised a fundamentalist, right? So what's your opinion on non-fundamental Christianity? Like, so, Lutheranism, Catholicism, Orthodoxy, those kind of types.
I think that fundamentalism is by far more damaging, but I think that all religion is detrimental to some extent. And I say that cautiously because if people do it openly, recognizing that it's just a ritual or a gathering or something like that, I guess I don't see harm in that.
Would you say that belief in God is damaging, or is it something about the nature of organized religion specifically?
I would say even taking organized religion out of it, I would say unwarranted belief in God is harmful. And I would say that, in my opinion, belief in God is always going to be unwarranted because we live in a universe that looks like there is no God. And so by the time you started assuming there is one, even jumping so far as to take the contention seriously, because from my perspective, there is no evidence. So to get to belief in God, you have to jump to some kind of level of credulity. There's some kind of skip in your thinking that has stopped you from properly considering some level of science or morality or some other question. You've given up on certain questions and just jump straight to God. And that's what I think is harmful, is you don't properly consider all kinds of philosophical or scientific questions. You just give it up and say it's God. And in my opinion, to get to God, you have to skip steps. And I think that's dangerous, even if you take organized religion out of the equation.
Are you familiar with like the classical arguments for God, like the 5 ways of Aquinas and whatnot?
Yes, I am. I grew up very interested in apologetics and all that stuff. So I don't know that I could list them as Aquinas's. I was in a Protestant denomination that would have probably ignored him or, whatever, because he was Catholic, right?
Well, I mean, he was before the Reformation, so strictly speaking, it's not
right. They would have in my circle, they would have called him Catholic and said that he wasn't really a Christian. Mm-hmm. So, but I think I've probably heard the same arguments, just not labeled as his 5 arguments.
Have you ever heard the term friendly atheist before?
The term
friendly atheist is a type of atheist that would say that in and of itself, a belief in God is neither harmful or beneficial. It's just it's fine, and that if you're a theist that takes it as a faith that you don't put it in the school system, and you don't claim things like the earth is 7,000 years old, that they're not like openly hostile to that kind of thinking. A friendly atheist would be like, okay, well, you have that belief, that's great. A non-friendly atheist would be like, regardless of anything you do, the actual belief itself in God needs to be abolished. That would be a non-friendly atheist position. And it's not, that's just what they're called. It's not supposed to be like, oh, well, you're hostile, but it's just called friendly atheism versus not friendly atheism.
Right. It's hard to say where I'd fall on that, because as far as my literal belief, I do think there is harm in any belief in God, and I think it's best when people don't. But as far as how I'm going to interact with the public or people I meet, I would probably lean more toward the other stance, that if someone's willing to, like you said, keep their hands off education, be a reasonable person, think through things at least somewhat reasonably, if they've grown up with some kind of benign belief in God and they live their life as a mostly secular person, I'm not going to harass them about that, certainly.
Now, would you kind of join forces with somebody like, for example, if they were a theist, but they were a theistic evolutionist? I mean, they believed all the same things you did, except they just happen to have a belief that God was the one that started everything. Would you ever consider joining forces with them to kind of help quash this young earth creationism and stuff like that?
Yeah, depending on what the conversation is. And I've done that too. To me, it all depends on what the current conversation is. And, you can kind of see as a debater conversation's shaping up, who's taking what side and what they're starting to say. And I would certainly step in on their behalf or speak along with them in that context.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious because, again, I think it takes a village, and there's all kinds of channels out there, and some of them are a lot more vitriolic and hostile than others. Some of them are just, for example, like you look at like Paul G's channel, he just wants to get the information out there, right? I mean, I've never seen Paul G vitriolic toward, a theist. He may not agree, obviously, but he'll at least recognize that, look, I'd rather have, and this is my position, this is why I bring apology a lot, because I think we are aligned on this, is that I'd rather have somebody who has different theological beliefs than different scientific beliefs when they're advocating for things that I know that are not scientifically true. That, to me, just that should be the crux is what my channel is about, and what I think the GDC is about, as far as we don't want bad science taught in schools. And when people say, oh, you need to teach intelligent design next to evolution, I'm just telling them to piss off, straight up.
Yeah. So
that, to me, is my goal. Now, again, other channels are a little bit different. Some of them actually just want to promote an atheistic stance, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm cool with that. I think they're limiting themselves, though. I think they do themselves a disservice, because not everybody really wants to listen to atheism, no God, no God, no God. I think they want a little more substance than that, right?
Yeah, and I would say, if you're to ask me what my perspective on God is, and is it totally harmless, I would give you the answer I did and essentially say no. I don't think it's entirely harmless, but I don't think it's really bad enough that's where I put my focus. And if we're taking it back to how I'm addressing it on my channel, I think I very rarely actually make an argument that there is no God in most of my videos. In fact, I have a couple friends who are non-fundamentalists, kind of Christians, and some of them are like, well, why are you saying that? It doesn't offend them, because I'm not really saying there's not a God, but they're like, does anybody actually really believe this? And I'm like, yes, they do. Mine is more targeted specifically, I think, at the fundamentalism that I grew up with. And partly because that's the mindset I grew up with, and that's the mindset I understand as far as religion goes. But then also, I think that is the more dangerous one. And I think that's
I totally agree with you. I'm on board with that. I think you're absolutely right. So I totally support you on that.
Can I ask?
Yeah, of course.
So I can kind of see why you would say fundamentalism specifically is harmful. Why would you say non-fundamentalism is harmful? Like the alternatives.
Non-fundamentalism. I don't think it's going to be broadly harmful to most of society. I just think it depends. It depends on exactly what we're defining, I guess. I just think that whenever I'm trying to think of how to explain it beyond what I said before. I just think as long as you're taking some kind of leap to believe in something like a God or whatever, I think that it's not horribly harmful. I think it can be pretty benign for a lot of people in the way that everybody has their little piece of woo or whatever. But I think there's some kind of mentality there that's not entirely rational, that other kinds of irrational thought can spread from. I don't think that's bad enough that I would really focus on it or harp on it, but that's where, benign non-fundamentalist belief in God, I don't really touch that, and I would generally leave that alone and not address it. I don't think in and of itself it's that harmful. But if I were to ask, is it entirely benign? I don't think it is.
Yeah, and I respect that position, by the way. I don't fully agree with it, but I respect it. But it's because only for the fact that, look, when I hear people say like, "Oh, atheism is not a rational position," I have to take the same side. Well, when a theist says, when an atheist says, "Well, theism isn't a rational position," I kind of like distance myself for those types of positions and those types of arguments. Not that I don't understand people's reasoning. I mean, I'm not saying your reasoning is bad on that, but I for myself, I avoid those types of things because, look, if one person says, hey, this other side's being irrational, and the other side says, oh, this person's being irrational because of what they think, it doesn't get anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so would it be fair to say that the reason you would say non-fundamentalism is wrong is because it's more like an a fortiori, any kind of irrational belief is wrong, and you're persuaded that belief in God, generally speaking, is going to require a leap somewhere, and by virtue of that, it's harmful.
Right, exactly. Like if you're going to be a sucker for a benign non-fundamentalist belief in God, assuming that that's kind of a poor choice of words or maybe a harsh choice of words, but if you're going to fall for that, you're setting yourself up to fall for something else, possibly, if you're not training your mind to think rationally about that. And I know that calling people irrational or calling their belief irrational is not really the best place to go in a conversation with somebody. And I generally don't, just like I don't generally address belief in God specifically itself. I don't tackle that or get on people for that. I'm not really interested in that whole topic as much, but it you know, call on it as I was here in this context. If I have to say, is it harmful? I think there is some harm there, but yeah, I would say it's minor enough and generally benign enough that that's not what I'm going to focus my attention on.
So when I hear rational,
and it tends to offend people, and it tends to offend people who are otherwise decent and in most areas of their life rational. And I think it's also important not to go around being those atheists who are just going around crapping on everybody's belief if they just have some nice general cultural belief in God.
Like the reason I pushed the point, and I'm done with that. Like I apologize if I overdid it, but it was largely like I'm a philosopher. Like I like philosophy, and that's sort of my thing. And I have like I am persuaded that there can be a rational theism. It's just like philosophy is just one of those things where you can look at everything from like 1,000 angles, and so you know it's. So I disagree with you on the fact that non-fundamentalism is harmful, except at least in some, like there are some cases where I can imagine it is, but I mean like in general, for the simple reason that I do have this experience with philosophy and whatnot, and like there are theistic arguments out there which challenge me. So it's like, I guess
no, I agree with you on Frank. Here's the real look. I don't think a position it's in of itself, and by the way, I can be challenged on this, and I'm fine with that. But I don't think a position of itself is either rational or irrational. I think how you got to that position determines if it's rational or irrational. That's just the way I personally kind of look at it. Does that make sense, Frank? I mean, if you have, it's a process of how you get to that position, not the position you hold so much.
Yeah, like I'm reading like Alvin Plantinga's I skimmed through it more than read it, but this work on his work on necessity, but it's where the modal ontological argument comes from. And his argument at the end, roughly speaking, is that the whole point of the argument isn't to show that God exists. It's to show that theism is rational. It's that, like, yes, you can disagree with this, but the disagreements are going to be based on, like, really novel and, like, sort of archaic. Well, not archaic, that's the wrong word, but, like, you're going to have to, like, look really deep into philosophy to find issues with the argument. So it's, like, it's rational. Like, it's understandable why you would find issues with it, is roughly what Plantinga is saying. But, like, you could find issues with anything in philosophy. It's just that's how deep it is. So by virtue of it being this deep philosophical thing, you can rationally hold to the position so long as you have done all this thought and continue doing the thought. And that's sort of the way I would put the same thing that Steve just said in more.
So you're saying with the modal ontological argument that if God can exist in any possible world, he can exist in.
No, I'm not like arguing. No.
Let me finish. That God has to exist in ours, but you're saying that's not so much an argument for God's existence. It's an argument that if you look at the modal ontological argument, and then you're just saying that all it is really trying to say more of that it is rational or can be rational to hold a theist position rather than argue that it is saying that God must exist.
Yeah, roughly speaking, like that's okay. And that's not what I'm saying. That's how Plantinga.
That's how Plantinga is arguing it. Okay.
Yeah, like Plantinga like actually puts forth the argument. He's persuaded by it, but like he realizes why other people wouldn't be. And so near the end, he's sort of like I can't remember what he said exactly, but it's quoted a lot, but it's sort of quoted out of context, so it makes it sound like I'll shut up.
I think people get the modal ontological argument a little wrong. I think they basically think that it's trying to define God in existence, and I don't think that's originally what the intent of the modal ontological argument is. But
it's like the idea of it makes sense that if you have a being which exists of necessity, then he has to exist. Otherwise, he wouldn't be a necessary being. The question is whether such a being does in fact exist.
Well, you know what? I notice now I have
it's whether or not a necessary
I got a
being is
polytheist in here now.
necessary.
So Ocean.
Oh yeah.
Hey, Prophet of Zod, meet Ocean, your nemesis, my nemesis, everybody's nemesis, because he's a polytheist. So he's in a world unto himself. But Ocean is brilliant. He's very exceptionally intelligent. So Ocean, what do you got?
Oh, Steve.
You're a smart dude, man. I'm not just trying to stroke you. You're a smart guy.
Yeah, Ocean,
I do feel properly stroked.
And you only have a beard second to Trey Jadlow, so yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Oh, don't mention his beard and mine in the same sentence.
So what do you got for us, Ocean?
I don't know. I was listening. And am I correct in understanding this guy is of the opinion that there's like theism is irrational or something like that as a concept? I only just came in, so I might need to be updated a little bit.
Well, I don't want to misquote Zod, so he can answer that.
No, I heard you criticizing him from that perspective, so but I didn't hear him say it. So
no, I just put forth my perspective. I mean, I understand what Zod's position is. I'm not putting forth whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that everybody who believes in a God is flatly irrational. There's a couple different aspects of this to it. One is I'm probably projecting my experience onto the question, which is a very fundamentalist perspective. And even drifting away from fundamentalists, it's very much leading up to a specific kind of personal God who's watching over the universe. And to me, granting that kind of being, I would think that it would manifest its existence in a way that was fairly immediately obvious to us and didn't necessitate the construction of all these deep philosophical arguments that you need to either discover or rely on a philosopher to get to. And I'm fairly familiar with a lot of those arguments. I personally find that they are trying to back into a pre-held belief for the most part.
Because it's complicated, it's not true.
What's that?
You seem to be saying because it's complicated, it's not true.
Not what he's saying.
I don't think that's what he's saying at all.
That's
actually.
what I'm hearing.
I think what he's saying
I wouldn't
there, but
it's what I say.
What I heard was because of all these weird philosophical arguments being required, that it doesn't make sense. That's part of the reason why it doesn't make sense.
I would say there's a disconnect between. Okay, I'm speaking more from the perspective of somebody who grew up with the Christian idea of God as somebody who wants his existence to be known to us and has the ability to make it clear to us. And in fact, our eternal souls depend on him, are coming to understand and believe in him. From that perspective, to me, it's hard to understand why such a being would sit back and essentially be invisible and expect us to hopefully run into William Lane Craig and understand his arguments and find it compelling in order to find salvation. It doesn't mean that the arguments, just because they're complicated, are necessarily false. I just have trouble reconciling that, not with any God necessarily, but with a God who wanted us to know who he was and had the power to make himself known to us.
I've used the same argument, Zod. I've said the exact same thing.
Yeah,
why does somebody have to have such in-depth knowledge of some of these really complicated arguments, right, to get to a faith-based position that God exists?
Well, a counter I can imagine is that like children naturally infer the existence of God or something like that. Because they kind of
right, but children don't naturally infer Christianity.
Yeah,
I think that his argument is against Christianity, particularly
invisible friends too. So who cares?
Yeah, but like
I might agree with him that it's like okay, so when you assign all these properties to God, he starts to make less sense when you're saying like he wants you to have a relationship with him. He's all good. He's all powerful. He's all these other things that Christians claim, and then you put that all into one entity. It starts to get really contradicting and confusing to try and make sense of it, and that makes sense to me. I can agree. That's part of the reason why I'm not a Christian. But I guess are you concluding from that, therefore atheism, or are you going a different direction with that?
I would say not just because of that, therefore atheism. I would say, just broadly speaking, the fact that I've never seen evident reason to believe in God is what leads me to atheism. And of course, we probably all understand within this conversation, that doesn't mean I know that there's no God. It just means that I interact as intelligently as possible with the universe as I see it around me. And, among all the various beings and concepts and whatever that present themselves to me, a God just doesn't seem to be part of that picture. And it takes a bit of a leap to get there. So, yeah, I would say based on I guess it essentially leads me to agnostic atheism. I would group God with UFOs or Bigfoots or whatever. You could, well, not Bigfoot so much as probably not even quite as possible. But aliens or whatever, it's something that could be out there, but I've never seen compelling reason to believe in it, so it just doesn't fit within my whole scheme.
That's a fair analogy. Yeah, I wanted to just mention this about the rap thing. Are you going to add the beats, or is that something you're not going to do? Because if you did, I think it would lose a bit of the poetic side to it, because I watched I think it was Voices in His Head, an Abraham rap. I think that was the most recent one I watched, and I thought it had a real poetic flow to it, and I think if you added a beat to that, it may take away from that kind of poetry aspect to it.
Oh, that's interesting.
I was get something just straight. There might be something I'm confused about. Go ahead and finish between the two of you, but I wanted to respond to what you said just now.
I guess the answer to that is, as far as the beat goes, I was going to try toying with it and see how it comes out.
Oh, aye, give it a go, aye.
Yeah. Given your feedback, I guess I would at least maybe put up parallel ones and give people the option or the preference. It's just all the feedback I'd gotten, except for yours up to this point, was, wow, this is cool, but it would sound way better with a beat. So,
wouldn't it be great if YouTube could give you an option, like several viewing options on the same video instead of different videos?
Oh, don't give them good ideas, because they'll never.
Yeah.
We've already established the fact that YouTube, Patreon, and Google Plus, they don't know how to implement things correctly. They just don't. I don't know what it is with these big companies. It's like whatever they can do to screw things up, they're going to find a way to do it.
And they have some of the best, most technically proficient people that you could get. I mean,
it's really mind-boggling, isn't it? I mean, look at some of the things that they do, and you sit back and go, all right, who the hell is this idiot that did
Hangouts
this?
is just so completely unintuitive.
Yeah. Oh,
I know, and you've said, Steve, that Google Hangouts don't like Androids, and Androids are Google.
Yeah, no, they hate it.
Insane.
They absolutely hate it.
It's ridiculous.
Look what Google News did to their platform. Google News destroyed Google News just because they wanted to put it on this type of platform and that. And now if you go to Google News, there's so much white space and it's disorganized and everybody hates it. I mean, literally everybody hates it.
I would say it started.
Steve, are you complaining about whiteness now?
Yes, too much whiteness in the world.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, I
want to take the conversation like polytheism is in the default position.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. So am I correct in you're saying that you would put the likelihood of God on the similar level with aliens, or is
that the Zod?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't put it on necessarily on in exact mathematical terms, but I would say as far as how they've manifested themselves in my life, which is not at all. I would just consider them so unlikely as to not demand my consideration. Go ahead, sorry.
Possible, but not, you haven't experienced it.
Theoretically,
what you're sitting with the gods.
Yeah, theoretically possible in the way there might be an alien behind the moon, or there might be a leprechaun under a rock. I mean, everything could be possible, but
why do they always pull out leprechauns? Yeah, go ahead.
There's always some default. It's either going to be leprechauns or fairies.
It's almost as if, they'll say that something is possible. Like atheists do this. It's a common thing where they'll be like, it's completely possible, just like leprechauns or fairies. And
I have the answer.
The unsaid thing in there is like, well, leprechauns and fairies are obviously, fucking lies or whatever.
Yeah, I believe they don't exist. I mean, here's the thing.
That's unfortunate. That's the first time I've pulled out leprechauns.
Which is the reason they always bring up leprechauns, is because they're after their lucky charms.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing on this. Look, just because something's saying something is possible is only saying that it's logically possible, and it doesn't mean that it's probable. Matter of fact, something can have a 0 probability and still be possible.
Well, if the MOA God is possible, then he exists.
So just because something says something is possible means nothing. It just means literally there's not a contradiction involved. That's it.
I think
that's all it means.
There's more, right? But there's more arguments as far as like the logical necessity of God than there is.
That's a whole different
necessity of leprechauns.
Yeah.
So I would put them at God at least a little bit more likely than leprechauns.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that. I mean, leprechauns certainly is stupid. In fact, that's the first time I've ever used leprechauns to my knowledge for the comparison.
Oh, you just pissed off the entire Irish nation. That's okay.
He's after me lucky charms.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, that's fine. Yeah, and I wouldn't say that God is obviously equally rational with leprechauns. But as far as it's just not something, I guess I've said this already, but I just don't see any manifest reason to believe in it. So if there's, I think, a personal God who wants me to know about him and could let me know about him, I think that's close to logically ruled out. But if there's some being out there that
we can rule out the Christian God. That's fine.
Yeah, and there seems to be some confusion in the live chat on the whole probability thing. Real quick, if you look at an infinite probability distribution, there are zero probabilities, especially when dealing with transcendental numbers. But it is possible. It's zero probability, but it's not impossible. So there is something on infinite distributions where if you look at transcendental numbers, that does exist. When I say something has a zero probability, that still means that it's possible. It's in context.
You're talking about like my pants being purple right now. They're blue, but it's logically possible for them to be
No,
purple,
it means that if you have a real number continuum and you randomly pick a number on that infinite number line, there's a zero chance of getting a rational number, but it is possible.
But it's still possible.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. As far as like an infinite number.
Right. That's just the way infinite numbers.
If you're going to use the probabilistic argument, that only counts for the fact that you yourself have never encountered anything that's spiritual. So you have a zero probability rating to it, which is why it's going to have a zero on a probability curve, because you've never seen any evidence for it. Correct?
That's what I understand him to be saying. But that would be to you, Zod.
Yeah, that would be to Zod, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was that?
You've got two polytheists in the room, so there's a...
I made a really
we collect pagans around here, dude.
Totally undercut all your arguments, and you're done.
Dress, say it again, Dress.
I said no. The only reason that we would assign a zero probability to it, if you've never encountered anything that's spiritual or divine, because you have nothing else to compare it with. So therefore, you can only have a probability of zero because you have nothing to say that you've seen it before. So therefore, you cannot calculate a probabilistic
That's a Bayesian
number for
approach.
It is.
Yeah,
I'm a Bayesian kind of guy.
You are a Bayesian kind of guy. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think there's if there's been no prior observations of something, then yeah. But most of the time, I think you put a 0.5 in for that. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that I can safely say there's zero probability that leprechauns exist. They're a fiction. Yeah, because you can look at the history of it. It's a fictional thing. So I would put a zero probability on that. Does that mean it's impossible? No.
They're the modern Victorian iteration of things like the She and the Tath and the Dam. That's where the leprechauns come from, and that's the development that you can see the development through the Irish myth stories, the Irish fables.
But the thing with the
and hero stories.
But the thing with the God claim, most atheists I know, I don't know any of them. Well, okay, I know a couple, but very rarely will an atheist say, "Hey, I believe God doesn't exist." But you know what? I know that for an absolute fact. There are a few, but.
Seth is one that says that, and I have a lot of respect for him because he defends it well.
Who's that? Ocean?
Seth.
Oh, Seth. Yeah. Seth. Well, yeah. Seth knows his stuff, but it's just something that most people. The reason I think most atheists won't go that far is because it does require a huge burden of justification for that, and Seth might need it. Seth, if anybody could do it, it'd be Seth, because Seth knows his stuff. But.
Well, partly, as far as my perspective as an atheist, I'm just not interested in that question. I'm not interested in boiling down questions of whether I can get down to the philosophical nitty-gritty of whether, fully disproving a God, which I don't think that's really a rational position anyway, to say that you can 100% disprove any being that you would define as a God. But also, I'm more interested in theistic claims as they impact people's behavior or affect their lives. And so partly, if you're asking me questions about, to the extent to which I feel like I can rule out God, or I believe I was asked more or less, is my lack of prior experience with a God, does that keep me from recognizing it if I saw it or interacted with it? Is that?
Can I give you the basic difference between kind of like my personal view and I suppose some of the Christian views that I've seen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is quite simple. I like the Amalekite question. I think it's a great question when you're looking at morality, which is, when the Israelites were ordered to kill all the Amalekites, the women, the children, the infants, and the babies. They were all specifically mentioned in the text.
That was really heinous.
and also the farm animals associated with them.
Oh yeah, that's right. And I think was it Saul kept one or something? Kept a.
Saul let the king survived, and then he got punished for it. And David comes back and describes how he's slaughtered all the Amalekites, which is why I like using the word slaughtered.
Yeah,
a lot. But you know, and I had a Christian turn around. Well, if you're what you think is God came down and told you to do, what would you do? And I'd say no.
Well, I made that.
And I think that is what
if there was this God, this huge being of just immeasurable and comprehensible power.
Let him finish, because I know where he's going. Druss is basically articulating the difference between polytheism and monotheism when it comes to our attitude towards the gods. Because if God comes down and commands one of us to do something, we can disagree with that.
Yeah, and say I choose this other God, right?
No, not even that. You can choose ourselves.
We can just say no. That's the whole point. We can say no because what we're looking at is the fact that there is an inherent responsibility to our actions. We are responsible.
But you don't need polytheism for that. I don't have polytheistic belief, and I
can
say no to
I'm not saying you need polytheism for that. He's not saying it's necessary. But the question is, if God comes down and gives you a command, are you going to obey it immediately? Some atheists even say yes.
Well, out of fear, though, most of anything else.
Right. But the polytheist says no.
Well, again, polytheistic, I think, again, there's a fear factor there, right? You can't say what you're going to do when you're that much in a state of fear and shock.
It's not going to be out of devotion to the God.
It wouldn't be out of devotion. No, I grant that, right? I mean,
with Christians, it's like,
No. The term is it's not out of submission.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Right.
That is the difference. We do not submit. We choose.
But Druss, there are atheists out there saying, "Oh, I would never do what this type of God tells me to do," and I'm like, you know what? I don't buy that. Now, granted, you agree.
Steve, you're bringing in a completely different thing, which is like it depends on how scary the God is. Like if God comes down and threatens you,
right? But I'm making a point.
That's a completely different thing. We're talking about a commandment being issued by a God, as a formal request kind of thing.
Well, you're talking more of a Christian God with divine command theory.
No.
Yes, you are. Yeah,
I don't know where you're getting this,
if God tells you something to do something as a Christian, you're obligated to do it. There is no God, I'm not doing that.
If you're subservient to him, yes.
Yes, that's my point.
I'd say even under the Christian worldview, you're not obligated to do it. You can either choose to follow God or not. But a Christian would say that they're subservient to their God, therefore, when they receive the request from God, they are subservient, therefore they will go out and do the thing that they're requested. With the polytheist, I might be a follower of Odin, but if Odin asks me to do something that I'm not okay with, I ain't going to do it.
I don't know too many Christians that would say, I have the option to disobey God. I don't think I've heard that argument before.
I think every Christian would say that. Isn't there the whole salvation thing? You choose whether or not to belong to Christ?
It sounds like we're talking about two different things, though, isn't it?
As a Christian.
Yeah.
We're talking about whether you theoretically have the option to disobey God versus is, under the Christian worldview, is obedience to God always right? And that's what I hear you're saying, the difference between polytheism and
polytheism. The obedience to the God is not always right.
Right. Yeah. Now, I see the distinction there, sure. But I'm saying as a Christian, they are obligated to obey God. Now, anybody
so you're saying
can say
a polytheist that can disobey a God and consider themselves doing the right thing, where a Christian doesn't have that option.
Right. Yeah, polytheists can still be morally justified.
Right. Okay. Well, I know we've got a polytheist here, so I wasn't sure entirely what Ocean's position on that was. But yeah, that clears up.
So Zod, are you going to be a polytheist now?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I do have a question.
Well, I
guess
everybody has. Go ahead, Mr. Who was that?
Serious?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, when it comes to, I guess, the properties that you give a god, if one is like all-knowing and or all-powerful, if he gives you a command, you're kind of screwed either way, because even if you don't do it, he could be like, I mean, if he has the ability to quote-unquote trick you, then he could be playing you. You know, you could be doing what he wants anyways. There might not be a way out of it if a god gives you a command.
Well, it might not be the right answer. Look at what he did to Abraham, right?
Well, again, I think that comes down to some of the differences between when most people talk about God, they're talking about Christianity, and they're talking about the omnipotent, omnipresent, all-knowing, outside of time and reality and space, kind of dude. But when you look at most polytheistic religions, there are very, very few absolutes. There may be qualities that are almost absolute. And Ocean used a brilliant argument, I think it was from Dawkins actually, about the fact that whilst, Odin in his worldview is not all powerful, he is the most knowledgeable being in the universe.
And
that is one of his qualities. So that was quite interesting, and obviously that was the sacrifice to Myrmir to gain a draft of wisdom.
Well,
He
has argued that
didn't he?
Odin is more powerful than the Christian god in that aspect before.
He gave his eye for that, for knowledge, didn't he?
Yeah, he sacrificed his life.
His life as well, but
Oh, right.
because he hung from the tree for 7 days. It's also why I also like there's a Christopher Hitchens one, where someone, Jesus is in the eternal realm, and he's talking to Greek god, tied to a rock, had his liver eaten out every day.
Prometheus.
Prometheus.
Yeah,
sorry,
stealing
yeah,
fire from the
Prometheus.
heavens. Prometheus.
Yeah.
Oh, they come up with the
and I was
most
like, no,
inventive-
wrong guy with the rock. It's a
Sisyphus.
Yeah.
Sisyphus.
Sisyphus was the guy that rolled the rock, and he was an Athenian king that got in trouble for basically taking the mickey out of Zeus.
Yeah,
but we won't get it.
They do come up with some original.
That's a good channel too. Sisyphus Redeemed. Have you guys seen that channel? Oh, just throwing that out there. Good
I
channel.
haven't actually, but I'll look it up. So I mean, and Jesus is in the eternal realm chatting with Prometheus. He said, "Oh, how's your weekend been?" He said, "Oh, it's bloody awful." I'm sorry, how are you? And he said, "Oh, it's bloody awful. Just been nailed to a cross, dead for 3 days, and then came back to life." And he just went, "Bummer weekend," because he was tied to a rock for eternity, having his liver eaten out
For eternity.
for eternity. Yeah. That's a Christopher Hitchens joke. It's not mine.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Just by the way, we're going to be trying getting Richard Carrier in here to have a discussion with Ocean sometime soon.
Oh no!
So just giving a heads up on that, Ocean, that I'm making that arrangements to get Richard Carrier.
Why on what? Is it? Please, dear God, don't make it be on the.
It might be on mythicism.
What do you want it to be on?
We're going to be trying to get a few people involved in that particular thing on a panel.
If you want someone in with Richard Carrier, I'm probably not a bad choice for that one as well.
So,
what do you want me and Richard Carrier to discuss, Steve?
Oh well, I mean, I was interested in the conversation the other day when Richard was talking about the whole Sagittarius. What is it? Saturnium, or what is it? What's the festival?
Saturnalia.
Saturnalia. I hadn't heard of it before, believe it or not. I may have been passing, but I knew nothing about it. That was my first exposure to that.
There's a Saturnalia Yule. I'm actually having a debate with
Yule,
a Christian
but I never really knew the
on Sunday about this, about the influence of paganism into Christian practices.
We're
going to be
everything
covering stuff
Christian
like
right
Christmas
now is
ham,
paganism, it seems.
Yule logs. I need to look
trees
up on the mistletoe because he wants to talk about the mistletoe.
Yeah.
I don't know how he's doing a Christian origin for the fucking mistletoe, but he's saying that there isn't. None of these things have any pagan origins. He's talking about there's no pagan origin in the Christmas tree, the Yule log, Santa Claus. This guy that apparently is coming in for a conversation with me. I don't know how he's going to do fucking Santa Claus.
Wait, Richard Carrier? He's saying that all that's pagan.
No, not Richard Carrier. This other guy.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Somebody I'm having a debate with on Sunday.
Okay. I love to hear that. Zod, have you?
He's a Christian who says that there's no pagan origins in any of the Christmas traditions that we celebrate.
That sounds like that Kirk Cameron movie.
I just watched it preparing for this. I was just like, what? Because I was thinking it's like trying to find stuff that says there's no pagan influence, and the only stuff I could find was Kirk Cameron.
I didn't know about that.
Everybody else seems to admit that, there's some cultural diffusion at least going on between Christians and pagans. I
can probably send you some papers on that.
I would love to have some of that because I'd love to be able to cite some stuff.
Yeah,
so far, the only thing I'm finding is like bead. I guess you would be talking to me about some of the stuff that you were talking about with cite bead. Is that correct?
Not just bead, but there's a whole host. I mean, you can go back and look at some of the Roman writers on the Celts and what they wrote, and also look at who was the Emperor Fabulous or whoever it was, who was Germanicus. Of course, it's fucking Germanicus. Stupid idiot. Germanicus. And the writings that were done about the wars against the Germanic tribes and the practices that they had. That there's mention in there. You can also go to archaeological and anthropological papers that talk about this as well. But,
Yeah,
you know,
because I need to get prepared by Sunday to be able to cite myself fairly well, and I know the gist of things, but I don't have like sources.
Well, let me real quick. Let me kind of get back to Zod if I can, so it's not the ocean.
Sorry,
So
I want to ask. Ocean, I'll tap you up on G Plus, and we'll exchange some ideas.
Steve, is it okay if I ask Ocean a quick question about Norse mythology?
No, I want to bring back to Zod.
Okay.
Back to Zod.
Yeah, bring back to Zod.
I can make
Kneel
it
before Zod.
It's just a real quick question.
Fine, Chris, go ahead, make it quick.
Go for it.
In Norse mythology, are the punishments are any punishments that are equivalent to like the Greco-Roman gods, and they're really inventive punishments? Is there anything like that?
Are you talking about afterlife punishments?
No, for the gods, for the Norse gods.
Oh yeah,
No,
you could be cursed, abused, and sent around different places. Misled. He's talking about humans being distracted by the gods, because again, you got to remember in pantheistics, we cover kind of from white to black and everything in between. So you have representation. So you have things like Loki, who's the god of mischief. You might have one of the gods upset with you because you pissed him off by saying no, maybe, and he'll go and lead you around the houses. But what he can't do is he can't interfere with the skein of fate.
Right, okay.
So cool. That's the difference in that mythology. Is that a fairly good explanation? Okay?
Yeah, that's cool.
I wasn't sure what he was asking still, so I guess if he feels answered by that, then fine.
Well, it was, like what they did to Prometheus, they punished Prometheus. I was wondering if there was like any parallels with the Norse gods.
Fuck with people, Ocean was the question.
If they do fuck with people, definitely. But as far as if they fuck with each other, there's the Fenrir is tied up underneath the earth, as is Loki.
Right.
And there's a mixture of stories about how the gods are punished. Balder, for example, is killed by Loki and is kept in the Helheim by the goddess Hel.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Cool. Thanks.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yep.
So, by the way, who's this guy Zod in here again? It's been so long. Sorry about that.
I'm a little out of my element.
I tried to make that quick.
No worries, man. Dude. One thing you have to get used to with the GDC is we go down tangents like par for the course.
No worries.
But have you looked at any of that?
I would have fed a broad knowledge, Steve.
Yeah, full of knowledge. Have you done a video or looked into a lot of the paganistic things that have gone into Christmas? Because I mean, I don't see how anybody argue that most of Christmas is not pagan. I believe that. But have you looked into that?
I haven't much. I have a kind of a passing understanding of that, but I haven't looked into it much or had a huge interest in it, to be honest.
I find it interesting because, again, I didn't know what the festival was called, and I didn't know that there were certain things like that, like the masters became the slaves. They were able to like switch positions and basically you could gamble. You would actually gamble during Saturnalia, where you would.
It was a lot of naked drunkenness.
What's that?
It's a lot of naked drunkenness. You can see how Christians would be upset by that after a while.
The Bacchus hedonistic type thing. But I mean, there's
the whole thing. Saturnalia ends with the celebration of Bacchanalia, which is like the crescendo of it all, which is the 24th and 25th of December.
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely influence there, right? So if you have somebody that you're talking to that says there's no influence at Christmas, I don't know what the hell their argument for that is going to be. Yeah.
Be interesting to see how many Roman generals how many senior Romans were born in September to October. Yeah.
People were like
just
having at it, right?
Or how many of the slaves had children around that time too?
So Zod,
who's your daddy?
What do you see going forward? I'm gonna turn it back to Zod here because this is the title.
Who's your daddy? No one knows.
Who's your daddy, Zod? Who's your daddy? What do you want to see on your channel for 2018? What's some of your goals? I'm kind of curious because we're gonna try to boost some of these channels up and get them subs and get them noticed, because I don't like the fact when people put so much effort into a video and it gets underwatched. Even I feel that pain. So
I'm just gonna keep moving forward with what I've been doing. I think I'm always just pressing forward, trying to improve my ideas and my presentation, and people really responded very, very well to the last video I did. And so I'm going to the extent I'm going to try to put my focus a little bit that way, just breaking down specific arguments and analyzing them, and essentially just providing a little lesson on them.
That was the William Lane Craig video, right?
He was briefly at the beginning of it. It was essentially, it was dealing with an argument that he is probably most widely known for, or one of the more widely known people, which is, sorry, I'm spacing for a second. Oh, the only reason you don't do horrific things is because of God,
right?
Or that's the only reason not to do it.
Yeah, his argument is basically, if there was no God, everybody out there would be doing, some immoral stuff, and that you have to have some kind of God to have morality, which is an argument that I think is just absolutely absurd on so many different levels. And I'm not a big fan of the moral argument. I think they get tedious and bogged down, and most time people aren't even talking about the same definitions that they're using. But I can tell you right now, I firmly believe that morality can exist in a society regardless if there's a God or not, or gods.
Yeah, it's one of the most tiring topics. I would never, I won't say I'd never, but I could not envision myself wanting to discuss that live with somebody on the other side. Not that I want to put myself in an echo chamber, but like you said, it always ends up coming down to definitions.
Always.
And it's such a tedious line of reasoning to begin with. And so I prefer just to analyze it from a distance and explain what it's trying to do. And even in brief interactions I have online, I try to explain what the whole basis for secular morality is, or, why we should be moral to each other, even if there's no God. And they don't have really much other than repeating the same thing over and over again, and they do it until I get tired of it. So
I think that's a great way to do it, Zod. Great way to do it, because you did an exceptionally good job on it. Because you watched the debate, or you may have, but other people may have watched the debate we tried to have with Holy Kool-Aid and Gret Gleiler. That didn't work out too well, and it wasn't nobody's fault. It wasn't anybody's fault, like Gret or Holy. It's just that they were coming from things with a very, very different perspective. And
yeah, they basically just couldn't agree on definitions well enough to proceed, right?
Right. Did you watch it?
Yeah. I was at work, and so I couldn't finish, but I think I watched up until had pretty much
That's exactly
come
what
apart.
happened. Now, I think Gret has some pretty bad arguments. I like Gret. Don't get me wrong. I do like the guy. He's friendly. He's nice. But man, does he have some bad arguments.
He comes off nice to me, but I don't think it is nobody's fault that the argument falls apart, to be honest. I think the reason is because theists pick an argument that is based on hair splitting from the start, and relies on that essentially, and there's not really much room to go other than that. But that's my personal perspective. Make a huge
mistake in reasoning. Like Gret's thing on Monopoly. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you nailed that one.
Thank you.
You nailed that one, because I was thinking the exact same thing. I know people haven't really watched your stuff, and by the way, when you go over to sub to him, you might want to binge watch some of these stuffs. But one of these things that Gret had was he was making an argument in relationship to monopoly and objective morality, and Zod just did a huge analysis on it, and it was great because he was right on too. And I'm one of those people. I'm not against objective morality. I honestly think objective morality can exist. I think a few people that I know that are either agnostic or atheist feel that way, but it's a hard thing to argue for, and that doesn't mean that you have to have a God, though. You can have objective morality without a God. He's arguing that if objective morality exists, you have to have a God. I'm like, he's never made that argument. He's never explained why that has to be, ever.
There's some really interesting anthropology on morality. And how a lot of it seems to conform, to being a collective group animal, and especially when it goes from being sort of tribal, family-led into sort of more town, sedentary, and then city-based, which is then civilization. That actually, I think, has some interesting terms on it as well, because I think some things are kind of hardwired into us. Yes, I do think we're hardwired into it that, to generally protect each other, especially when it's family units or the collective or the group unit. and I think that's where a lot
when you have secular morality and you have the subjective morality and all this stuff, these things do exist in some degrees. I mean, Azad makes a great case for that. I mean, yes, we do have a compact with each other. Hey, you know what? It sucks to go out and start killing people. We just don't generally do it. It's bad for society. Well, there's a compact that we have. It's morally wrong.
And again, I think morality, again, for me, my personal take on it, comes down to really two fairly simple choices. Do I choose actions that heal or actions that harm? And that's by action or inaction.
Yeah, and I think that's what most of us go with, and I think that's where the apologist arguments are pretty disingenuous.
Yeah.
Because they always pick arguments that are based on all of our instincts on harm. They list all those and say, without God, you can't have those. Yeah. They never say, without God, we're all going to break the Sabbath and boil goats in their mother's milk. They always say, without God, we're going to murder and rape and all these things that the Bible doesn't even particularly care that much about.
Yeah, I've noticed the same things. Yeah, exactly.
No,
I think that's why I think it's it's just a lot of negative rhetoric. I think they want to appease most of the time the people that already believe some of this stuff. But anybody who really looks at that argument, without God, you're going to be out raping, pillaging, and killing, it fails across the board.
Have you ever heard of a Kantian moral argument?
Well, you mean like Kantian
roughly
ethics?
speaking, it says like you should believe in God because
I can't really understand it. But...
roughly speaking, the argument is saying that justice won't be done unless something like a Christian God exists, and so you should believe in the Christian God because there's no practical motivation to be good besides that.
But that's an argument from Ed Baculum, and that's basically saying, look, that you need to be moral, or else you're going to hell or something. That's giving you a reason to be moral, because if not, there's going to be a judgment. There's going to be consequences.
No, it's not that. It's the fact that people escape ultimate justice.
Yeah.
That's the same thing. I mean, there's no end result for the ultimate justice. As an example, one person lives his life, good, honest, trustworthy, doesn't go out killing anybody, and the other person's a serial killer, then did Kant argue that what's the difference if there's no ultimate justice for living one way and not the other?
Kant himself, just the argument. Like, so for example, a counter I would make to the I would say, okay, like there are obvious problems with being a serial killer. Is that like it's not very easy.
Not for the serial killer, he enjoys it.
Well, I have a very
simple to find consequences for such an individual.
I have a very simple retort to Kant, which is life sucks. It generally doesn't have to be fair. Deal with it.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, is that people will deal with it.
But that's kind of true, though. I mean,
that's what Kant's trying to avoid.
There's no reason why there has to be an ultimate. There's no reasoning why there has to be an ultimate justice. There just isn't. Why does there have to be? Would you agree?
That's your own conscience.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, everything's not going to come out fair, and I would wonder why we need to have retribution anyway. I mean, the whole point is to build a society where we're all as safe as possible and secure, and there's order.
You believe more in restorative justice than retribution, right?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, once a criminal's been burned alive in hell for 1 million years, who cares if he burns for another 1 million years? Like, well, I care in that it's bad, but how is that doing anything constructive?
Oh, shit.
Well, the general argument is that in hell they're still sinning. So like they're continually doing more wrong, and so continually deserving more wrong. So like they never stop doing evil, even in hell.
Yeah, that all boils down, I think, to a whole other can of worms where the idea of sin is kind of nonsense.
How do you
in my
sin
opinion.
after death?
Cursing God, roughly speaking.
You perform a death sin.
I mean, yeah, I understand the whole. You'll be lashing out to God for eternity, but
I would too if I was burning alive, I guess.
Yeah, it would kind of suck. Yeah, but I don't. I
guess basically he puts you in a fire to the point and you're still alive and everything, so you're feeling all of it. So you wind up just dancing around saying "God damn it," and you get an extra 10 years every time you say "God damn it." So it's just like, fuck, I can't. And it's like, another 10 years, you just cuss, and it's like, fuck you, you asshole. That's 20.
So the summation of
man, I'm trying to figure out how to get the fuck out of this fucking hellhole. I don't. It's we're starting to lose count here, dude. You're in there for another 200 years. It's just a bad dialogue.
It kind of reminds me of those judges when they're dealing with the sovereign citizens. And another 30 days. And another 30 days.
I was thinking more of the principle from Breakfast
Club. And then they break
Club.
your window.
Yeah, that's true too.
I recall that reminds me of The Sopranos, where Christopher Moltisanti shot, and he says that he was in hell, and Polly Walnut says, "You were in purgatory," and says, I can't remember what it was. You add up all your sins, you multiply it by some arbitrary number, and then it's like 700 years, but that's like 3 days in eternity terms. Says, I reckon I'll need to do about 700 years. It was very funny.
I thought it was based upon, and again, my mythos sucks, but wasn't it something about Anubis would take your heart and weigh in against the judgment of a feather of something like that to determine what your fate was and how long you would be there for? You guys remember that?
I'm not sure. No, it doesn't ring a bell.
We got mythicists in here. We got people that know mythos. I'm pretty sure it was Anubis would rip out your heart and then kind of weigh it against the feather of truth or the feather of justice or something.
I think it was like if the weight of your heart was greater than, so like the idea is the weight of the heart is like the weight of guilt or something like that.
Yeah, there's a book called or there's a series called The Incarnations of Immortality by Piers Anthony, and there's something very similar. If you had sin and it weighed you down rather than lift you up, it basically after you died it determined which way you were heading and how fast you were heading there.
What mythology is Anubis from?
Anubis is Egyptian, and Anubis was the guide
of course.
He fought them before the judge, who was Sekhmet.
Stargate, yep.
Stargate was, according to some, Stargate was a documentary, by the way.
Yeah, I heard that. They thought that there was a Stargate. Remember that thing in Norway, the spiral thing? I think it was a rocket. It was in the sky, a big spiral.
Oh, that was that was a rocket though. That was the exhaust.
Yeah, it was a rocket. Yeah, it was a rocket. But people thought it was a Stargate.
People are stupid.
No, it's a Stargate.
No, those are those woo-woo people that anything they see, they're automatically going to jump to the most unlikely thing rather than try to find a plausible explanation for it. So.
Akin Wuda.
But anyways, real quick, before I forget, we're already going on almost 90 minutes, and I want to get Zod back into this, obviously, because this was for him. But real quick, I'm putting the link, and you guys are going to hate me for this. I'm putting the link in the live chat right now. Go vote for Tommy. Go Tommy. Please vote for Tommy. I
got a question for Zod, real quick.
So, go vote for Tommy first.
Go vote for Tommy. Definitely go vote for Tommy.
Thank you, because anybody else in here vote for Tommy? If not,
because he thinks
no, I'm kidding.
That marital rape is not a thing. That if there is a marriage, you automatically consent.
By the way,
that's horrific.
Let's ask Zod real quick. I don't want to say it outright. I don't want to try not to get demonetized. But are you familiar with the contest?
I am not.
Okay. Every year this is the 4th annual. On YouTube, Red's Rhetoric, Flat Earth Debunker Extraordinaire has a contest, and they nominate 10 people who are the biggest. I'm just gonna fuck it. We're gonna demonetize anyways. The biggest dumb fucks of YouTube, and the criteria are. Well, that's the name of the contest, right? I got it. It's the name of the contest. Dumb fuck of the year. So these are the people that throughout the year that say some of the dumbest things, and the conditions are: 1, they have to be willfully dumb fuck rather than by mental defect. They have to interact with somebody on the panel. There's 10 or 12, I think, panel members of us. And then what's the other condition? Oh, they couldn't have won before. And
they can't be mental. They can't have some sort of
well, that's what I said. They have to be a dumb fuck by choice.
That's rule 1.
Yeah. And so what we'll send you the video, but basically what I'm pushing for is this one guy who believes that tumors are good for you, that they soak up toxins, that cancer is a thing that's, I guess, good for you, that you can't rape your wife if you're married, that, let's see, what's some of the other things that he's come up with?
Vaccine gives you autism.
Vaccine, well, yeah, he's anti-vaxxer.
Evolution isn't real, and he can prove it.
Homeopathy is good.
Homeopathy is proven science. And
cells have intelligence. Yeah, each cell has a consciousness.
Atheists would throw babies off of balconies, which really
that's a good one, actually.
Up the wrong way.
Yeah, he thinks that because atheists, if you're an atheist, why don't you just go take some babies and throw them off the a balcony or something?
That really dragged up the wrong way. It really did.
So, anyways, Zod, we're gonna get you to vote for Tommy for for dumb fuck of the year. That's cool.
Yeah,
Sure, I'll go do
like I
that.
say,
Like this state.
Sounds like a worthy candidate.
He is a worthy
but for
candidate.
Zod, yeah, it was the living dinosaur actually that gave you a shout out, and a chocolate hat that led me to yourself.
Oh, cool.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
do you know the living dinosaurs on? I mean, do you know him pretty well?
What's that?
The living dinosaur actually gave a shout out to me a while back, and
Cool.
he's a really nice guy. I mean, he's extremely smart. I mean, he's a
Oh wow, that's
biochemist,
great.
So
He's got his scientific and cultural literacy is really something to behold. It is staggeringly cool.
we're going to be.
And he's got
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, he's got a really good he's got a real good knack for picking out great channels.
Yeah,
So,
I think he's going to join us this Sunday. I think maybe
oh, cool.
he comes in every so often.
I was going to say I expressed my distaste for the DFTO.
Yeah, well, we don't care though.
Yeah, just saying. I feel like morally obliged to say that.
Let me put the. Yeah, we're not the only one. There's been a few. I had a friend on Facebook yesterday just go off on me on that very same thing.
I won't go off on you, Steve. I just think it's wrong. I think it's dumb.
No, it's cool. We don't care.
I know you.
Yeah, he really went off on me on it, and then I tried to explain to him why we have it, and it's like, oh, you know what? I kind of see a little bit more your perspective on this, and so, yeah.
I can see the perspective. That's why I'm not going to flip out. I still think it's
I kind of understand, Frank. I do, but I think there is a place for satire.
I do too.
My thing is,
I don't think dark humor.
I've had this conversation with Steve before. Roughly speaking, I think there's a limit. So for an entire, I'll shut up.
Yeah, but you're not a funny person, Frank.
Like,
Yeah,
hey, that's me.
Yeah,
let him speak. Let him speak.
Let who speak?
Let him speak.
Frank, the floor is yours, Frank.
I'm fine. Me and Steve have had this conversation before. He knows my opinion. It's like there is a. How does it go? I forgot my argument.
Dodd, do you have a dark sense of humor?
I was on the panel for the first dumb fuck of the year 4 years ago because I thought it was just kind of like a funny thing to just poke G-Man constantly because that's what we do. We poke G-Man because his reactions are hilarious. But it's spinning off into 4 years of this and stuff. It is a little bit tiresome, and it is stupid. I agree that it's stupid. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. Yeah, but I think that the original point of the dumb fuck of the year was honestly just to piss G-Man off.
Yes,
that was it.
That.
And then now that it's spun off into this annual event is just kind of whatever. I mean, that's why we have the rules. The rules is that the same person can't win every single year because G-Man would clean up every single year.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I think that would have been much more hilarious. It's just kind of an annual reminder of how stupid G-Man is by giving it to him 4 years in a row.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have been against that, but I think it's this, and this again. Let's get back to Zod. Sorry, Zod, but no, I think it's this. Look, throughout the year, most of us have some pretty damn serious conversations, and some of them are heated. They don't always go very well. I mean, I'm the first to admit there's certain people that rub me the wrong way. We don't see eye to eye, and I'm not a huge fan. Okay, it happens, but the dumb fuck of the year is supposed to be something where we just blow off steam by mocking people that for some reason really want to put forth an excessive amount of stupidity. Not just your average Joe Smuckatelli going, oh, the earth is flat. I mean, we're talking epically stupid stuff, and we laugh at it. I enjoy that. I don't have a problem with that. And I think most people are like that. Now, there are some that don't. I get that. My friend, that was berating me the other day, doesn't like that. Okay, granted, don't watch it. I totally understand. To each his own, different strokes for different folks kind of thing. But I think it's enjoyable. When when these things have thousands of people watching these events, obviously other people feel the same way. So it's okay. I mean, I'm not a big fan of TJ Drunken Peasants things, right? I think TJ has great commentary on his own channel, but I'm not a fan of the Drunken Peasants. They have 3,000 people watching. Okay, I just don't watch, right? So, anyways, Prophet, did you vote? Do you know how to vote, Prophet? You just go to that video link and click like or dislike. That's it.
Yeah, I saw that.
And that's all. And any socks that you have. The other person that's in the lead is Anthony Riley, who's a flat earther, who's is incredibly stupid.
I just voted for Tommy 4 times.
Yes, thank you so
Well,
much.
And
like
I might have
and
orgasmed
dislike.
a little bit.
A like and a dislike counts as a vote.
Either
a
one.
dislike counts as a oh right.
Either
Okay.
one.
Yeah, dislike counts as a vote.
Yeah.
So
Oh, right.
I
So there's
all
a
my votes
counter
are
vote.
dislikes. So
All right, Zod. So what do you want to ask us, Zod? What do you want? I mean, you're just now. I mean, you've been in the GDC. You did join the GDC a while ago. But what do you want? What do you know about us? If you have any curious questions or anything.
I don't think I have any specific questions right offhand. Any broad ones?
Why we waste our time with this? Anything?
Oh no, I get that. It's very very interesting conversations. It's kind of a cool group of people with a lot of interesting points of view.
It is such a broad spectrum of people too. I mean, it is people that have degrees up to yin yang and people that are just completely lay people. But it's literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that get together and have conversations in real time, and that's something that really doesn't happen much on YouTube. There are other formats similar, but they don't get the numbers because they're just not that interesting. They don't have people like Ocean and Frank, and it's just, people that just have opinions and really want to talk about these things in a way that the average person can't discuss.
Who doesn't have me?
Sokka's and Druss and any of you guys in here. So, Chris, I mean, Marcus. I don't know the other guys. What is it, Mr. Sirius? Is that your name?
all right, guys. So I want to make an announcement real quick. Tommy Hall is at 337, and Anthony Riley is at 382. I want 40 votes for
Give it
fucking
40
Tommy
votes,
Hall.
people. I want
40
40
fucking
votes.
votes.
So what we
make
need to-
stock accounts, do whatever it is. This
Here's-
fucking asshat.
Steve wants 4 figures for Tommy.
Here, I want 4 fingers. What?
Figures.
Oh, okay. I want 5. You know what? Yeah, totally.
I want 4 fingers in Tommy's.
4 figures.
Yeah, totally different type of thing there. Okay, so everybody in the live chat right now went after this hangout or during this hangout. I don't care. I think if you do it during the hangout, though, you have to do it in a different browser because if not, you're going to lose the feed. Makes one sock account going Tommy for something and then or whatever, any sock account name. Then that'll put us over the top. So everybody in the live
Everybody
chat,
needs to
just
make
go
a sock
make one
account.
sock
Tommy's a
account on this.
bitch.
Right now.
005 or some shit.
Yeah, Tommy.
And go make Tommy Hall.
I've
Tommy
got to do a
Toomer.
shout out.
Yeah, call it Tommy Toomer.
I've got to give a shout out for fellow Blue because she's basically saying, surely claim your inheritance also deserves a mention while we're doing this.
Oh, Thaler's right. Claim inheritance.
I mean, yeah, he does. He's at 28 votes though.
Yeah, 28 votes is not going to come back.
So there's a thing that I look at when I'm doing dumb fuck of the year, because last year I was rooting for Darwin's deity even though he lost, but with this year my picks were Christian Hillbilly and Tommy Hall because of not only are they really stupid, but they're fucking obstinately stupid and loudly stupid. But Tommy Hall is the most realistic choice this year for me. So I think that
I agree.
There's so many good reasons to vote for Tommy Hall, and none of those things apply to Anthony Riley in the least. Like, Anthony Riley's a flat earther. Great. He's a dumb fuck. Is he dumb fuck of the year?
Right.
No.
I don't think there's anything
Tommy
special
Hall
with Anthony.
is dumb fuck of the year. The guy is a fucking idiot, and it has all kinds of opinions that are just absolutely reprehensible. The one that I tag a lot is his whole fucking, you can't rape your wife legally.
No, that's
Listen to Ocean
terrible.
people.
Which
Ocean
is
speaks words
absolutely
of wisdom on
disgusting.
this.
See, Sean Hubbard's got the completely opposite view to yourself, Ocean. He thinks that Anthony Riley is, because he makes a point it's dumb fuck of the year, and he's making the argument that Tommy Hall is maybe like dumb fuck of the week or maybe the month.
Tommy's been doing this for
No.
years.
Dumb fuck. Tommy Hall is dumb fuck of the past 4 years
Yeah,
combined.
Yeah,
All right.
Yep,
This
It's his
guy's
turn.
been
It
around
is his
way
turn.
longer than Anthony Riley has, and nothing else. You need to give Tommy Hall your vote on the basis of seniority. This guy has been around being a dumb
Senior
fuck,
dumb fuck.
for a very, very long time,
Oh my
and
God,
he deserves recognition for it.
Yeah.
He deserves recognition for his years and years of hard work being a dumb fuck. Let it be
Tommy Hall,
recognized.
Thank
I
you.
want
He
40
he
votes.
wants it.
By
Like,
the end of the day,
Tommy
I want-
Hall. Like,
I
Tommy
want
Hall
Tommy
really
Hall
wants
to
it too.
break
Guys cannot
400
talk over
today.
each other.
I want him to
That's
break
the
400
we
today.
have.
Yeah,
Stop, go
Tommy
ahead.
Hall really wants it too. That's the other thing is that like since the nominations went out and the voting started, he's only stepped up his game. For dumbfuckery.
Absolutely.
He's also complained about the fact that he's on it, saying that he's having a rough time right now, which means that he deserves it in spades. Because if you the thing that I find to be the most valuable thing about Dumbfuck of the Year is the response that you get from the person that's nominated. Like Ronnie, he didn't really blow up or anything like that. Tommy Hall, you won't hear the motherfucker shut up about it if he wins.
Oh, Ronnie's bothered
it's
by it.
It's going to be fucking wonderful.
But hey, guys, let me run this by Zod, because Zod's kind of looking out from an outside perspective because he's relatively new to the group. By the way, but throughout the year, Zod, I hope you really follow the stuff here, because this is just epic stuff. But
yeah, I certainly will.
Awesome. But let me run it by you. Here's a person who says a bunch of stupid stuff, and I mean dangerously stupid stuff, like chemo's worse than cancer kind of stuff, right? And people have called him out on this for so long. He's made the same silly arguments, it's been disproved countless times, right? And then he makes a post saying, oh, well, this is really hurting my feelings, and I'm going through a lot of stuff, and you're making fun of the fact that I'm saying these things, but you're not really refuting them. And a big old long persecution porn, right, we call it, post. And the person who does this award said, you know what, look, we don't want to really affect anybody mentally, right? That's not the point of Dumbfuck of the Year. We don't want somebody to get really depressed. We don't want to bully them. It's not a harassment thing. It's supposed to be for entertainment and just, blow off steam. And if you really are hurt by this, if you really find this to be affecting you physically and mentally, then why don't you take a month off and we'll drop you from the contest, which I think was more than nice. I mean, I would have gone 3 months, but he only asked for a month. Well, the very next day, the guy makes a post going, ha ha ha, here's a physicist that says exactly the same thing that I've been telling you all along. Victory, you suckers.
I could not believe that. That is, I made a comment in that. I said, Tommy, this is astounding to me that after your quote unquote sympathy post, you do this. I mean, this is literally why you get nominated. You make this post about, you're having a hard time and whatever, and then, like, the next day, he makes this cancer physicist post. I was just, I can't believe it.
That's the reason why and I want to get Zod's opinion real quick, but
Gentlemen,
Zod...
we have been gifted 10 votes from the audience, and I want to thank everybody for doing that. Keep it up, guys. Let's get this guy to be number one.
I was asked to obviously watch some Anthony Riley stuff by GeoStriver, and again, yes, Anthony's dumb, no question about it. But it didn't sway my vote. It could have, don't get me wrong, and probably may have possibly. However, when Tommy did that, it solidified it. You know what? Tommy's going to win. Now, let me ask you, Zod. If somebody's asking you, look, this is hurting me, because you're basically calling me a dumb fuck when I'm actually trying to give you actual science when he doesn't, and then the very next day say, oh look, I told you I was right because here's Paul Davies saying the same thing I am, which by the way he wasn't. Would you not say that is exactly what we mean when we call somebody a dumb fuck?
Yeah, for sure. It makes him sound like. I start to suspect that people who do that are, if not totally trolls, at least on some level, just want attention. And it sounds to me like he just wanted that much more attention anyway.
He was working on it. People are asking for the link again. Here you go. Link to go vote for Tommy. We can get him over. RSC says Tommy's borderline malicious. He is, actually. There is a malicious intent there with Tommy sometimes.
I said to Tommy a couple of times, I said, Tommy, I don't think you're a vindictive or a malicious person.
Oh, he can be.
And then, then he made a couple of posts and I says, Tommy, I said to you before, I don't think you're vindictive or malicious. But see these posts you're making, it's really making me reassess that position.
Yeah, he went after me like last year, and he was just calling me a liar left and freaking right, and everybody was asking him, what is it your argument is here, Tommy? And I showed he was so wrong. It was just to no end, and yet he was still, trying to put this narrative out, and it just wasn't flying. It was maliciously attacking me. We patched things up, and I'm not have any ill will to him whatsoever. But yeah, he could be pretty malicious.
I have trouble keeping interest in things or people like that, because I just feel like they're trying to get a reaction out of me. And so That might not be him. I don't have a whole feel for this, but based on what you're saying, those.
I was just kind of introduced to your channel recently. Steve was kind of posting, sharing some stuff from you.
I've been shilling for him. What can I say?
Yeah,
Zod pays me very well for that.
All right, update, guys. Update real quick. If Tommy Hall's now at 354, I want more votes. More votes.
Go ahead, Soccer.
So the look at your older content. How long have you been doing this for?
Close to 2 years now.
2 years. So do you have any like kind of rampant anti-Zods that are kind of running around that seem to like comment on your video, like following you around? That's
a good question.
I don't really have a recurring enemy or anything like that, or anti-Zod commenter or anything. I get they kind of come and go.
You do now. I'm going to go to your channel.
Yeah, you haven't really made it in the YouTube world yet until you at least have one person. It doesn't matter who it is. Just makes that one video about you where you're just watching this and laughing your ass off how goddamn stupid it is.
G-Man keeps promising to make one for me, but he just doesn't follow through.
I've had so many at this point, but I think one of my favorites was the last one. That was with that one guy, Max Colby. Oh my God, was that a riot? I was like, who the hell are you even talking about? It had nothing. Everything he said about me was completely wrong. He got nothing right. It's hilarious.
To my knowledge, I've never had the honor of somebody making a video about me. I've just had comments. So.
Give it time.
Yeah.
We'll make sure it happens. We'll find your nemesis. Don't worry.
What's going to be your next video about, Sod, if you can tell us that?
Crazy people in the GDC.
Yeah.
My next video is going to be a cartoon. I occasionally did kind of cartoon ones. It's going to be about school prayer and if they started having prayer in schools.
Cool.
Just like a little comedy or satire about that.
Yeah, I watched Dark Matter. Oh God, what's that old guy's name? Frank or something? Frank?
Who?
Can't remember. The old guy. Oh God, can't remember his name.
I'm pretty sure I'm younger than you are.
Is it Frank Turek? No, can't
Frank
remember.
Turek?
Frank Turek? He's going to be here next month, I think.
No,
We got him booked.
Oh, anyway, he said that the reason that God was sending tsunamis to Japan was because there's no more prayers in school in the US, things like that. Yeah, in Dark Matter.
Yeah, well, some of these people say some pretty damn stupid stuff. That's the kind of stuff about theism that bothers me. It just, when anybody says things like, oh, because of this natural disaster, it is because people are allowing gay marriage or shit like that. I'm just like, these people just are the worst of the worst. Worst. I can't stand it.
I thought they would have been sending tsunamis to Japan because of like tentacle porn or something like that.
Well, that's understandable. Tentacle porn is pretty creepy.
That would have been a much better excuse than.
It's just a weird way to punish people anyway.
I actually have a phrase that brings me a lot of peace when I think about this kind of stuff, which is every group has its shitheads.
Yeah, but these people are really extreme.
I don't know why I thought his name was Frank. It's Pat Robertson.
Oh, Pat Robertson made a living back years ago by saying the same thing, that because of homosexuality, that tornadoes and stuff.
Yeah, that's the one. Yep, and no prayer in school anymore, and homosexuality. Yeah, that's the one.
Well, I'm not a big fan of preachers. I have to tell you, one of the things that turns me away from theism is that these people that are advocating it are the worst advocates for it.
I don't know. I think it's amazing, like to actually like have the link between anal sex and tropical storms. I think is.
I would love to see the data on that. That'd be. I've seen
research that they must have into
things,
this.
Have you seen that site where they correlate weird things?
Yeah. Oh no. I mean.
Oh, I have to find it. There's a site out there that has the strangest correlations. Well, it appears to be correlations. They're obviously not. They'll just pick the weirdest random things.
Coincidences.
What's it called?
Coincidences.
Yeah, but
really?
they have these. You look at the plots, and it's like, oh, here's this plot for this. Oh, here's this plot for this, and they're like, it's like, oh, wow, cool. I like to see that data. Sure.
That's amazing, because I always like to imagine that there's some type of scientific explanation, like I don't know, like anal sex produces a special type of friction that goes into the atmosphere or something.
So
I don't
it's
know.
the
Like that would be
anal butterfly effect.
the anal butterfly effect.
Okay.
God, that's amazing. I'm gonna make that movie.
Anal butterfly effect. That's good. Yeah, well, what's rule number 32 of the internet?
There's porn for everything.
Yeah, if not,
Isn't
some
that
people make it.
Isn't that what it is?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's right.
that is true because some of it's amazing. I was recently introduced to quicksand porn.
Oh my God, Riley!
Which
got
if,
3
Oh,
that's
that sounds.
If you guys have,
stop it, people.
yeah, if you guys haven't looked up quicksand porn, you have to. That's all I have to say.
I think it maybe pass on that one. Yeah, I heard that Drag was saying that Tommy Hall used to, and unprompted, talk about anal sex in explicit detail.
Yeah, he's laid off that.
No,
though.
it's like, it's not that. It's that they have a lot of Christian fundamentalists have a really hard time separating homosexuality from just the physical act of having sex. Like they think that any relationship should be purely about sex or whichever their mindset, whatever their mindset on this is. I don't know. So when you get to them talking about homosexuality, most people that would that are advocates for same-sex marriage or anything like that, any type of gay rights, they're talking about the right for somebody just to be in a relationship with somebody else. But then you get into the Christian fundamentalist viewpoint, which is that they focus strictly on the physical act, and they bring this up all the time. It's all they want to talk about because they can't humanize these people enough by letting them know that these are true consenting adults that just want to have a loving relationship. If they can't do that, they can't paint that narrative on them, because that kind of goes against their argument that these people are just living in their sin and hate God and want to do whatever.
Yeah, it's almost just a straw man position almost.
Did Zod? Did your pastor, that one guy, was he anti-gay too, like that, like Steve Anderson type?
Yeah, definitely. Not like Steve Anderson. Not like where I believe Steve Anderson said the government should kill him or something like that.
Yeah, he advocated that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was very, very strongly anti-homosexual. He, in fact, I think he participated in some kind of position or open letter with a bunch of other pastors saying they didn't want to have some kind of equal rights legislation or something like that. So he was actually pretty active in it.
Wow. It's one of those things that I've noticed that when they're wrong on a few things, they're kind of wrong across the board, right? I mean, when you have these pastors that are willing to accept things like young earth creationism, I think that when it comes to things like homosexuality and morality, I think they're just as much off base. It seems to be just across the board, ubiquitously. They're just fundamentally, in my opinion, wrong.
Yeah, and not to open up this can of worms again, but essentially that's somewhat not that I'm saying this is necessary from all belief in God, but that's somewhat the mindset that I'm talking about. That once you let yourself be, just take a leap and be wrong about something, even if we don't want to call it, belief in God, but if you let yourself be wrong about certain things, your mind just starts skipping all over the place. And that's the mindset I saw, at least within fundamentalism, if not necessarily.
There might be an argument to be made for that. I mean, I'm not saying there's not. I draw the line when people say, "Oh, look at belief in God is mental illness." Then somebody has jumped the shark.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying at this point, not even saying that all belief is God is irrational, but it's that same kind of skipping steps in your thinking, or just automatically attributing something to a God that really shouldn't be.
Well, same thing with the whole. Did you see the rocket thing that they talked about earlier, Zod?
The what?
The sphere that appeared over Norway or whatever it was. Did you hear about that?
Oh, right.
Yeah, same principle. Same principle.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be religion. It doesn't have to be God. I think there's a whole series of mindsets that wouldn't exist in our society if people weren't predisposed to a fundamentalist religious thinking. But
yeah, and over a period of time, maybe that might change. I mean, I'm the advocate that look at if the society moves away from a theistic type thing and more people have a non-theistic type position over time, it's fine. That's not my goal, but if that's the outcome by having more science in our educational system rather than pseudoscience, then that is what naturally would occur, I think.
And I think that's the core thing, is just a scientific way of thinking, or training people to think scientifically and rationally. It doesn't have to move people away from God necessarily, because if we just got rid of God and that's all we did, it would be replaced by all these other things.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that's really good argument to be made is that, look, at the way I'm advocating for some of this stuff is people ask me, well, why don't you have an atheist channel? Because, well, I'm not an atheist, but, why don't you push the atheist agenda? And I'm like, because that's not what I think is what needed to be in society right now. And I understand the reasoning why some people do, right? It's like your channel. I understand your reasoning. I'm not faulting it at all. But I think there has to be a medium voice out there that says, look, my agenda is to get science taught properly. My agenda is to get pseudoscience out. And if the end result is a decrease in theism, so be it.
Yeah, certainly. And I think there's value in having the whole spread of voices out there.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
And the only thing that led me toward atheism as a topic, along from the kind of the incidental steps I talked about at the beginning, is just that's the experience I've had, and that's fundamentalism is kind of what I have knowledge in. So if I had more of a scientific background, maybe that's
your niche. That's the way to go. That's the way you should market your channel. If I could make any kind of recommendation, because that's what you do very well. I love the fact that you can take these arguments and not just make it about mockery of religion, because again, any channel can do that. There are some atheist channels that I just don't think really put forth that much interesting stuff. It's just more like, ha 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 ha. Yeah, whatever. I mean, do you want to see some really good, videos about explaining why things are wrong? Go look at stuff like Dark Matter 2525. Go look at Cite an Atheist. That kind of stuff. It takes some thought on that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, even satire. If you're making fun, there needs to be a core point.
Right,
otherwise
exactly.
You're just wasting
Brilliant satire, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just look at these funny people. Scientologists are funny. Yeah, we all kind of know these things. But people have asked about the atheist agenda. Yeah, no, there is an atheist agenda. I don't even think most atheists would disagree. There are some people in the atheist community that have an agenda. Atheism Plus, New Atheism. Those are agenda driven. There's no way to say that they're not. That's the whole point of them, is to promote atheism. That's what they do. So. Not everybody falls into that, right?
I like this. It's
like those street epistemologists, Steve.
They're agenda driven somewhat. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I do want to believe that as street epistemology gets a more refined methodological approach, it really is more just getting people to try to think a little bit more rationally rather than the original intent of it, which was to abolish religion. Have you looked into that, Zod, street epistemology?
A little bit. I have a passing familiarity with it, but not super familiar.
It's interesting.
I wound up digging into it really far and finding videos by like the founder and everything like that. And the founder is a disgusting human being. But
yeah, I don't agree with him at all. Don't get me wrong. I think that I'm not a big fan of him.
Right. It's like Peter or whatever the fuck.
Peter Pajordio.
Oh. Yeah, his last name is like this strange, confusing thing that is harder to remember than
Bellagio.
Complete doctrines of like Mormons or some shit. Like it's a very, very difficult to remember name. But,
yeah, but I think Anthony Magnabosco has the right approach. Because I like Anthony.
Yeah, I like his approach better. I'm still frustrated with Anthony, but for different reasons.
That's fair enough. But I mean, I think Anthony has. He really wants to develop this, and I think he's got a good heart in it. I think he's doing it from a good place, and I think there's potential there. So,
yeah, you found I think it was really good street epistemology. I was quite impressed with it, actually.
I haven't seen much of the street epistemology stuff, but like this might be coming from a place of ignorance, so take it with a grain of salt. But ultimately, it seems that they're presenting what is effectively a view from nowhere. Right? They're sort of like questioning other people's views, but they're not presenting a means of determining whether or not that's the way they should be.
Some of them try.
Yeah, some of them do try. It depends on the video.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's like that's what I'm wary of when I hear this stuff. It's like, look, it's one thing if you're saying, here's my position, here's how I evaluate things, and here's how I think you should do things. Like, this is my worry, right? I have gone through like slight panic attacks because of my search into epistemology. Because like when you realize that you have no way of evaluating things, and you're like,
concerning, right?
Right. That's one of the issues is that street epistemologists rarely understand epistemology.
That's one of the big thing. I was saying the same thing. I'm like, look at, I think, and this is purely my opinion on this, not that matters, but I think that if you're going to be going out there and doing something called street epistemology, you might want to know a little bit about epistemology.
Well, it comes to the double standard. It's the same thing that you find with presuppositionalists, where if presuppositionists, when they put forward these arguments, they don't hold themselves to the same standard, and they don't recognize that they're in the same boat epistemically as most atheists, especially when they're because their method isn't anti-atheism, it's anti-foundationalism. That's what they're arguing from. And the street epistemologist, in the same way, shouldn't be an advocate for atheism. A street epistemologist that approaches the theist with the same questions should be a skeptic. They should be agnostic. They should be just skeptical about everything. Like
we got
the way that
cookies.
Frank
Come to our
is.
side.
That's the thing.
That would be an honest representation of the argument that they're doing if they followed it to their own standard.
Like I've talked to you about this before, Sokka. This thing that I'm worried about. Like I haven't put it in terms of street epistemology, but like we had a private conversation, and like I'll tell you, this is what I said roughly. I sometimes won't say things to people because I don't have an alternative position to alter them. So I can point out problems in people's epistemology, but I can't provide them an alternative. So if I point out their problems and I don't provide an alternative, and they have my disposition, if on the off chance they're disposed like me, they have a real deep need for these deep answers, they could go into like a temporary or like state of just kind of.
Well, Frank, you could point out the problems with any system, any theory out there of knowledge or something. They all have problems.
No, I mean, like I know how to on occasion, like I can see somebody who's really confident in their view, and I can say
you have questions, but you don't have answers.
Well,
I can ask the questions, and I know that they'll understand the questions. But if they themselves don't find the answer, if they are like me, might go down a very dark spiral very quickly.
Yeah.
Because that happened to me a couple of times.
Matter of fact, Ocean and I was just in a street epistemology hangout just a couple of days ago.
That was fun.
It was fun. Street epistemology was the guy's channel, and there was Pine Creek in there, Doug, and a few other people. And
Pine Creek ran off as soon as I.
He had another thing. He was actually going over to talk to Jonathan McLatchy on Facebook. I found out because I saw him over there.
Okay.
Yeah. But
see, I think it's personal. He doesn't.
But it was fun. Really fun.
Every time we have a chance of talking, and he runs off because the last time I called him an angry atheist.
At least he doesn't pull the "I've got to go and walk my dog" line.
It's true. It's true. Sometimes it just seems like it's like, Doug, are you a little scared? You a little scared, buddy? Anyway, but yeah, we brought up some interesting stuff with the street epistemology crowd. The one thing that frustrates the shit out of me, and maybe I can get like a here from this crowd, is when they start asking what your level of certainty is regarding a theistic claim, which seems absurd to me. I don't understand why they ask that. Like,
again, it goes back to my reasoning with the fuzzy logic. It gives somebody at least a basic understanding of where they're falling on the belief knowledge landscape. But I've never been a fan of quantizing beliefs.
Fuzzy logic is meant to deal with ambiguous statements. It's not meant to deal with that. What you're thinking of isn't fuzzy logic. It's
Well, it kind of is a comparison to
Bayesian statistics.
Right. It's trying to apply some sort of probabilistic claim to the theistic, and then try and question that certainty. It winds up. I think it's predatory when it comes right down to it, and I think part of that has to do with its origin point being somebody who wants to create atheists, and he's generated a script that is predacious upon people that don't understand epistemology.
Pretty much.
Which is most.
That was
people.
my concern that I brought up to Anthony to begin with.
Walk out of a church, they don't understand the philosophical background of what they've got. I mean, you have somebody that's dealt with it, and they enter a street epistemology conversation. It's a little bit more difficult for the street epistemologist because they get it. But when someone who doesn't get that,
right,
it becomes a minefield for that person very quickly.
It's like with the argument, the questioning, that you hear from some theists is that out of all the knowledge in the universe, what percentage of it do you think you know? And
right, I think it's also predatory.
That question.
Yeah. It's questions like that. These questions that don't actually. They don't really establish what the argument
It makes no
is.
sense. If you say, you say there's an infinite amount of knowledge out there, which I think you could probably make the argument that there's an infinite amount.
There is an infinite amount of knowledge.
So how do you have percentages of infinite? There's no such thing.
There's literally an infinite number of addition problems. Like that's probably.
Yeah.
So, I'm willing to bet that somebody has a proof for that. Like 2 plus 2, 2 plus 3, 2 plus 4, 2 plus 5, and they're on and so forth ad infinitum. And then there's probably an uncountably infinite number of addition problems.
I actually I explained that to Darwin's deity once in one of his little off air Discord rooms, where he asked me, what do I know? And I told him I know an infinite amount of things. I know that 1 plus 1 is 2. I know that 2 plus 1 is 3. I know that 3 plus 1 is 4.
Right. I think that's true. I mean, you do know an infinite amount of things in that regard. Sure.
Yeah, and then I proceed to get kicked out of the room.
Yeah.
You know what I found?
I kind of love that. I'm going to use that.
Math is. Here's the thing. Math is the bane to a lot of things. Flat earthers, young Earth creationists, pre-suppers. I mean, it's like you get into a math thing, they're done. They're done.
No, I mean,
see that
just because something is
there's a Darwin's Greatest Hits of me and Darwin's talking about the law of large numbers.
No, Darwin doesn't grasp the law of large numbers.
It's hilarious.
If I remember correctly, the law of large numbers is basically as you do more experiments, you get more toward your expected value, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And he thinks it's something along the lines of what was his argument?
He said that it was impossible if you take a coin and you flip it 40,000 times. The law of large numbers states that it is impossible for it to be heads every time.
Oh, that's right.
I said that it's not impossible. The coin has two sides.
I think
just improbable.
Yeah, that's just he's confused on that highly.
I don't think it's like the likelihood of you finding the expected value approaches one, but it's always possible that you could just get an infinite number of heads.
Sure.
Right.
It's just that probability.
As long as you realize that each
the probability drops
is an
significantly
independent event.
It's 0 each time. It's closer and closer.
Anyways, I feel like we're ignoring Zod here. Dude, it's like we got so many people in here, and I know that.
Zod.
Talk, Zod. I don't want to ignore
Zod. Why do you hate Superman? What's your fucking problem with him?
Oh, sorry. I had issue with my mute button for a second.
Yeah, what's your problem with Superman?
My problem with Superman?
Yeah. He's a good guy.
Well, I'm not Zod to begin with.
He's a prophet of Zod.
Are you absolutely sure he's good?
Superman?
What's your level of certainty that Superman is good?
Yes.
Do you presuppose Superman has powers?
They're using presup.
Depends on how you define good, I guess. He's super.
Good is whatever Superman says is good.
And obviously that Marvel presup will gross a lot more than DC presup.
I think I'd rather be on Zod's side than Superman's side, to be honest.
You want to have
Zod
this
is a lot more
terraformed
interesting.
into
Yeah,
Krypton?
absolutely. And he's got those two sidekicks as well. The big fella and the woman.
Yeah.
The woman's sidekick is pretty hot, though.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah. The other guy's pretty retarded.
Yeah.
I'd get thrown
Terrence
on
Stamp.
Ever.
Yeah. You can't go wrong with
We just had a Google glitch.
She had a Google glitch.
She was saying interesting things too. It was a good point raised there. Oh,
Well, anyways,
Zod is
we're
at
up on
least
2
cool.
hours here, so I have a thing here where I'm trying to keep my
the chat is like, Zod's about to leave and never come back. Like,
yeah. I mean, he's just like, what happened?
No, this is all very interesting. A lot of it gets into territory I'm just not familiar with. So,
Oh, no worries. We don't have.
What do you mean by that? Like what part of it is getting into territory? Like they're talking about the comic books or like the street epistemology stuff?
dumb fucks of the year.
Street
Epistemology, I don't really. Yeah, I'm not really that familiar with. There are some questions I kind of had, but yeah, I'm just.
Where do you want it to go? Like go with your channel? Like what more stuff do you want to cover? Do you want to expand?
You already asked this question.
Yeah, get up to date.
Yeah, but I wasn't watching that stuff. Okay, fine, fuck it.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a variety of things, so I'm just going to kind of keep mostly doing what I was doing. People want to get me to get back to William Lane Craig, so I might touch on that a little bit. He gets tiresome, but mostly
I tell you, I like one argument by William Lane Craig, and the other one's not horrific. It's not, I don't accept it, but at least he's trying to make a point. And one of them is William Lane Craig's intermediate knowledge. I find it interesting. I don't agree with him, but God's, having intermediate knowledge, and then he manifests this possible worldview to exist because he knows what you're going to do, which is an interesting argument. I, again, don't think it's the way it is. And then I actually fully agree with William Lane Craig on his taking apart of Anthony Fleur's presumption of atheism. I think he's right on that. I think the presumption of atheism was just a shit paper. But other than that, I think all these other arguments are pretty bad. But you know what? Broken clocks right once or twice a day, right? So
I found, at least in my experience, nothing gets a rise out of Christians like criticizing William Lane Craig.
Well, that's because they're like, he's like the Messiah. But the William Lane Craig, I've noticed, he'd rather win a debate than actually be right.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's all about the sport of debate.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He'll insinuate things about Jesus, but then as soon as you bring up Jesus, he's like, well, that's actually not the topic of the debate. And yeah, he's very dodgy.
He's all for show.
Yeah.
If you ever look at his
I actually just watched the Sean Carroll William Lane Craig debate last night again, because it's probably one of my favorite ones.
That one was awesome.
But have you ever looked at William Lane Craig's thing on the presumption of atheism? It's pretty good.
Yeah, I should look more into that. I haven't looked much into that.
Because here's the thing: people tend to say, "Oh, here's this theist position," and they're always wrong on certain things. And I'm like, you can't make that assumption. There are sometimes they do make a good point. It's rare sometimes, but just because they have to have a theist position, because you tell people, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, you know what? I actually agree with this theist on his thing against this," and they're like, "Oh, you're just giving support to theists." Well, no, but you can't just arbitrarily say somebody's wrong because they happen to hold a different ideological belief. Look at what they're actually saying. They make a point.
That's an important way for us to distinguish ourselves from them, really.
Agreed. Absolutely. Thank you.
I just refuse to discuss Anthony Fleur's work just because it just leads into the conversation that we should not start.
Yeah, that conversation we should not start. However, Anthony Fleur is
I've resolved that problem. Common sense.
We're not going to get into that conversation, but Anthony Fleur's paper sucked. That's what we're saying. It was bad. It's just really bad. I'm sorry.
One thing I think is funny about Craig, at least in the very limited experience I had with commenters on my videos, is Christians who are totally critical of the entire intellectual establishment or academic credentials, still, as soon as you're talking about Craig, then all of a sudden those things are the beginning and end of the conversation. They'll start throwing at me how many degrees he had, all these different things he's done in terms of academic accomplishments, and basically you're nothing, so shut up. But you got to say like
Craig. Do it like Matt Bell says, William Lane Craig, because he just worships the guy.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Seriously, have you heard of Matt Bell, aka Rational Theist Matt?
A little bit.
Oh
I'm not
God,
very familiar with
he is just slobbering all over William Lane Craig.
They all do. It was weird. I'd never experienced that until I made videos about him, and then all of a sudden the way people talk about him, it's like
it's cult-like.
I think they would get angrier angry at me for criticizing Craig than for criticizing Jesus himself. I think Craig just represents a certain academic standing or stature for Christianity that is more important to them than the actual moral teachings itself. I don't know exactly how to put it into words.
Well, it could be that for maybe I don't know if this is for all of them, because like Craig might have been sort of like a saving thing for their faith. Maybe they had like a time of doubting, and then they found Craig, who was sort of semi-intellectual, and so he's not semi, actually he's an intellectual. So sorry, that's unfair.
Yeah, but, he's well educated. I'm not going to dispute that.
So like they found him, and so that he's both. He's pretty decent in a debate sometimes, depending on the debate. So, but nonetheless, he sort of gives this kind of multifaceted approach. It's like he's pretty approachable from any theological view, and so I don't know, maybe.
But don't you think he's kind of literally just talking to the people that already believe this stuff? I mean, I found that especially when it comes to like these preachers and young creationists, is most of them are just, as you said, trying to shore up the beliefs of the believer already.
Well, yeah, I mean, this if you go back to go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Zod. You get priority, Zod. Sorry, Sokka.
Yeah, I think that's his entire intention. I don't think he really has any. Well, okay, he likes debate as far as the rules and playing the timer and the terms of the debate and everything. But I really do think that intentionally or not, he's talking past the other person to his audience, and that's the whole goal of the whole presentation.
Perfect.
I made a whole video about that where just explaining that that's what he's trying to do, because at some points he'll get to a certain level and he'll lean his entire argument on an assumption that Christians share with him. And to me, that just tells me that he's trying to talk to his own audience.
Your pastor did the same thing, by the way.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, exactly the same thing. You could tell that he's literally talking to a select group of people.
Yeah, he does it. He lays it on even more thick than Craig.
Well,
Craig at least sometimes will have his argument. You have to untangle a few things before you get down to the core assumption that he wants everyone to share. The pastor will just come out and say, well, if the Bible's not true, then, or if Genesis isn't true, then whatever. Like he's clearly just appealing to things that they want to believe to begin with.
Yeah, if you guys, there's a couple, before I turn over to Sokka, if you guys want to see a couple videos from Zod that kind of stand out, watch the first one. I really like the most on his pastor that he did. I really like the one on Gret with the Monopoly and the one on William Lane Craig. Those kind of I think are more indicative of where I think your channel's heading to, if I can put that out there. Do you think so? Something along those lines?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
That kind of gives you a representation, then binge watch the other stuff. I mean, because the guy has like a fraction of the views that he should have on his videos. They're so underwatched, and we got to change that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
We're going to make you the next cosmic skeptic.
Yeah, I was quite surprised how few views you have on some of these good videos.
It's really where you're at. I mean, Cosmic Skeptic has a huge following because he has a lot of British following. He gets invited to a lot of events and things like that. Holy Kool-Aid does a lot of event stuff, so he gets to know a lot of different people. So, it's hard to have people watch your stuff, no matter how good it is. But I hope by word of mouth, but people say, oh, you know what? Like, for example, Steve said the video is pretty good. Maybe I'll go check it out. Or such and such said that video is pretty good. Maybe I'll go check it out. That's how I think, as a grassroots effort, to get people promoted. Because, I mean, it takes a village, man. It's not going to happen overnight. I mean,
yeah,
it takes several years. I mean, I've been on 4 years now, whatever the hell it's been. I started my channel in 2013. And, I haven't even hit 5K yet. So...
Yeah, but after you hit 1,000, that shot up pretty quickly, did it not? I think
it took me a year. I think it took me about a year to get 1,000. I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I was there when you had 1,000.
But I got to tell you, one thing that I can definitely say about my channel is that I have had people on here that have been here since day one.
I think you've got a lot of subs that are actually genuine, though, Steve. They're actually real people that watch your channel rather than Christ knows what a lot of the other channels have, like bots or fake accounts or.
I'm a skeptic.
Yeah, I've never done sub for sub, and I try to get the people to sub that I think are going to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got a lot of. You've got the people that actually watch your content rather than a load of. You could have somebody. Let's just, as an example, may have 9,000 subs, but they don't have any watchers. It's
low views.
Yeah, like G-Man, maybe.
It's well, I wasn't gonna say.
Well, he has viewers, but most of them are.
But he doesn't have 9,000. But he doesn't have 9,000 viewers per video, does he? So it's. I think a lot. There are actual genuine viewers that you have and subscribers, Steve. I think that's what it is.
I think a good example is the Living Dinosaur and Armored Skeptic. When Living Dinosaur asked Armored Skeptic to give him a shout out, which was absolutely abysmal. A lot of people commented saying, "Well, you don't really need that crowd, actually, Living Dinosaur. The subscribers that you have currently are kind of like the cream of the crop," and I think that was a really fair comment.
And Living Dinosaur has a good channel. I mean, very, very good channel. He put a shout out to me, and I got a little bump out of it, and I was thrilled. Honestly, and I hate to say this, and Armor Skeptic has never watched any of my stuff. He doesn't know who the hell I am, I don't think. Logic does. No, I've actually been in hangouts with Logic. I've actually had private hangouts with Logic. He definitely knows who I am. Oh, yeah, definitely. We definitely know each other. But I don't know Armor Skeptic. I've never talked to Greg.
No.
But here's the thing. I'd rather have the crowd that subscribes to the Living Dinosaur than Armor Skeptic any day of the week.
Absolutely.
Any day of the week.
In
fact, I'm a bigger fan of Shoe on Head than I am Greg. So, but they're never going to watch
Wild Heart in the chat is just
I love Shoe on Head. I think she's
Wild
awesome.
Heart has said. Wild Heart has said that TE almost got 10 viewers the other day.
Yeah,
So
I saw that.
it's true.
Almost got. So that'd be 9. Yeah, he had 9 viewers. You're right.
What, in a live hangout?
I think
In a
I was
live
one of
hangout.
them. Yeah,
Wow.
no, I literally was one of them. I think he read
I know,
out
because I went
one
over
of
there
my
and I took a
comments.
photograph
and
and
then
he
he
had 6.
Yeah, and then he deleted. Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah, because first
It's
of all,
sad.
he got the
It's
acronym.
like-
He got the acronym for Dumb Fuck of the Year wrong, which was funny.
no, that's right. I pointed that out as well. I actually said that to him in the live chat. I said that it was wrong, and he kind of you could see him reading it as I typed it.
This was
and
last
it
year's
like
winner's
he was
odd.
kind of digesting it. Yeah, it was.
Well, this guy is just stupid.
Yeah, I would much.
It's very sad.
Sorry.
What's that, Zod?
Oh, I'd much rather have a small community of people who are active and who based on their comments, I feel like my videos are making an impact or having some kind of effect on them than just blowing up numbers.
Yeah.
You're going to have
I
a
certainly
lot
wouldn't
you're
want
right. I think-
artificial.
You're going to be
Having a smaller group that actually take in what you're saying is better than having a larger group that just passes them by. It's it's common sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather hear individual stories, like I sometimes do. That this video helped me better explain something to my, some of my family member. Or I'm going to go show this to these Christians I know, or something like that. Or, know that somehow my videos provided some kind of clarity or put some kind of added to the vocabulary of the conversation.
Absolutely.
That's a much bigger deal to me than racking up subs.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what's funny is, and Thale Blue kind of hit the nail on the head as usual. When you looked at like the True Empiricism stuff, he was last year's winner, thanks to me and a few other people that kind of put him over the top, like the med student. But he nobody watches his stuff anymore because he got to the point. He started off going, okay, let's have hangouts like that I do, right? Okay, let's have conversations, and then he made the cardinal mistake. Oh, I disagree with what you're saying. Let me mute you. Oh, I disagree with what you're saying. Let me kick you out. And he would use moderation control in order to facilitate conversations. And eventually people got to the point of, well, I'm not going to have a conversation with you if all I ever do is get muted and kicked out. I mean, how does that facilitate a conversation? And so nobody wants to talk to him about evolution anymore. Nobody wants to talk about intelligence anymore.
In his live chat to the one that he deleted, I said to True that you need to humble yourself and just go into people's chats. If you genuinely want to talk to people and prove yourself to be a learned person, humble yourself and just go into chats or go into hangouts rather and just talk to people. And I could see that he read it because I could see him reading it while he was on the screen, but he obviously didn't address it. But it was a valid point.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
Do you
he's
know
never
what I
been
mean?
in here. He's one of the very few. There's been 2 people in the overall community, and people that we know a lot of have never been in here. Darwin's deity.
No, that's right.
And
Yeah.
True Empiricism, because they
It's
know
like-
they're going to get annihilated. Because I'll let
He
anybody
just
here
needs
take them
to-
apart.
If he could swallow his pride and just go in and have a decent conversation with somebody, everybody would have some measure of respect for him, possibly.
Yeah.
At least more than what it is
Possibly.
now. Right.
Possibly.
I mean, we could go into his. We would go into his hangouts. We tried, right? I've been into his hangouts many times.
But not for a long time though. I mean, when's the
Yeah,
last time you? Well, apart from your debate, Steve. I mean, you haven't had just a casual conversation with him for a long time, have you? He
Since
just doesn't do it.
I don't think I've actually verbally spoken to him since. Well, we might have had something afterwards the debate, but pretty much from that debate, yeah. I mean, G-Man, like I was in G-Man's room the other day. We were there for an hour. It was great. I enjoyed myself. I'm not going to lie. I hate to say it. It was okay.
You know, I've got to think about G-Man. He will still talk to people, which is all props to G-Man. He will still talk to people. Do you know what I mean? And I think he's made a little kind of resolution, hasn't he? A sort of New Year resolution.
I think a few people have talked to him and tried to mellow him out a little bit, and I think it's working. So I'm giving him positive reinforcement for it. I've been saying this G-Man I can handle.
Yeah. He's kind of, like you just said, he's kind of mellowed a little bit, and he's kind of like going, my pre-New Year's resolution, I'm going to talk a bit more. And that's fine. That's really good, because if you can just go into a hangout and just chat, although it kind of then goes a little bit wrong.
That seems to be a big problem. That you just can't have. You just want to have a conversation with them, and they have to turn it into a debate.
I did see the one that when he went into the geek room recently. It started out well, and then he kind of descended into a little bit of a shit show, to be honest. But it started out okay.
Yeah, and what's funny is, by the way, hey, Colorado Biker Prep, good to see you, my friend. Go vote for Tommy. There's the video link, buddy. I haven't seen Pipe Prepper around for a while, so go vote. I don't think he's voted for him yet. But, it's kind of funny because Ronnie dug in his heels. I mean, he literally did not take anybody's advice, and he's going for broke. He's doubled down again. And by the way, he doesn't know what the hell that expression means. He doesn't know. But it's really telling when all now he has is people watching him sitting on a sofa, kind of reading things off the screen when nobody wants to go in and talk to him. He has 6, 7, 8, 9 people at most watching. That's what he's relegating himself to. So it's very, very telling that there's a difference, because G-Man at least had like 60 people watching the other day. Matter of fact, Atheism Unstoppable took a clip from that at Hangout and put it on his channel, which was with me, Positively Godless, and G-Man. So people were watching it. Nobody watches Ronnie stuff. Nobody. But isn't it true, Thalo, though? I mean, the sadness. I mean, can you just feel the sadness from Ronnie sitting on the couch just alone, nobody dealing with him?
It's kind of a little, you can smell the desperation.
It's palatable. You can taste it almost.
Yeah, you can. But that's why I said, go into Hangouts and just talk to people. Just get back to how it was. It's like, just reset yourself. Forget about everything that's gone on and maybe start again. If you want to have a dialogue with people, the best thing to do is just start.
Yeah, but they don't want to come into a room. They don't want to come in a room where people know more than they do, which is everybody.
But then he shouldn't be puffing off his chest and be proud. And I have not a clue what he's talking about. I mean,
Zod? Sorry,
go on. No.
Oh, I just said that I've learned to pace myself in conversations with other people, especially with theists, just given the nature of the conversations I have with them, because I do have the temptation to want to, mute people or put myself in an echo chamber. I think that's just a human thing. But I recognize what my limitations are, where things they say aren't going to push my buttons usually, but it's how insistent they get that just wears me down and gets tiresome. So I've just learned at what point I'm going to start being tempted to say rude things or shut people down, and I just kind of dismiss myself from the conversation or find how much that I can really take before I get there.
That's normal. Zod, that's normal. There's nothing wrong with that. That is human nature. The difference is you're an adult, you're articulate, you're educated. You know how to handle yourself in these situations then. They don't.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. I mean, these theists it's not like the theists like General Han Solo or Richard Busey or Max Hangs Out or Jade or those guys. They're theists that we love having conversations with, right? Or even Ocean, he's a theist, or Druss, he's a theist. They're polytheists, but they're theists. But it's the ones that are so arrogant to think that because they have a specific ideological belief that everybody else that has a scientific belief that differs with them is automatically wrong. That's the ones that I get after. Because I hate that. I absolutely hate it.
I mean, there is that line that you can draw down the middle of the CCP members, to put it bluntly, and every other theist in the GDC. It's
absolutely
it's such a blunt line that it's almost comical.
It's the arrogance of certainty.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's worse is that even with the other set of theists, they've all learned something with each other. You go back. I watched a video the other day, one of the very first times Ronnie was in the community on the Magic Sandwich Show, trying to have a discussion with Aaron Ra and Hogtie. And you know what? That could have been yesterday for all practical purposes. Nothing had changed. It is the exact same stuff. He has learned nothing. Same defiant arrogance. It was just.
But I then think that is he's a done deal, isn't he? He's not going to learn.
No.
And he's not willing to talk, unlike going back G-Man, who will at least engage. Whether G-Man learns or not is one thing, but he will at least engage, whereas True does not want to talk to anybody.
We're back to probabilistic arguments, aren't we?
So let me ask Zod. I'm going to try to wrap this up not too much longer because again, 2.5 hours is about the max I want to go. So Zod, who of the creationist side that YouTubers like? I'm going to throw out some names out there that you might know, like Venom Fang X or Nephilim Free or Shock of God. Who do you think, in your opinion, if you had a chance to like have a one-on-one with or be a nemesis, who would you pick? It's a hard question, I know. I saved the harder ones for later.
Honestly, there's one thing. Speaking of, Gret just commented on my videos as we were speaking. He must have found me through you, but I'm not really sure. I have some passing familiarity with some of them, but that's one thing I want to get stronger on is being more familiar with what the other side of the community is like. Which Christians are currently making videos that are relevant to the conversation. But I really don't know at this point.
Oh, that's a good answer though. That's a really good answer because you're going to find there are theists out there that are actually having really good conversations. We have Dr. Kenny Rhodes, we have General Han Solo, and we don't have to agree with him. I don't agree with them on a lot of things.
is also really good.
Ochiwawa, great.
Yeah.
But they do at least have a skill to talk, and it's very challenging to engage with them. Not gonna lie, it's challenging, and that's what I'm looking forward to. That's what I like, right? I don't want to have somebody like Nephilim Free that where the challenge only is to try to decipher what the hell he's saying and then play this sophistry type game where he's basically just throwing stuff out there and seeing what sticks or trying to be so obscure that he's trying to get you on a gotcha point. I'm not interested in that.
General and Ochiawa will actually come with an argument. They will come with evidence for why they're making the argument that they're making. Especially General. I mean, he goes really, all the way back through to, the Greek and the Aramaic and the Hebrew. And he looks at it contextually as well with history. And his history is pretty good, and that's kind of one of my things.
I want to get him and we can carry together. That's what I was trying to arrange.
I think this is why there's such a delineation between the two types of theists that are on here, because there's the theists that are brain dead and there are the theists that are actually learned, and you can tell the two. It's like shining a light. It's as clear as day which one's which.
It's as clear as plumping chickens.
And which do you think is more interesting, Blue? I mean, look at it again, and this sounds weird because I'm kind of dissing myself on this, but it doesn't really take much to take down some of these theists that are creationists. It really doesn't. Let's be honest.
But
I've been telling you that for years.
No, I never disagree with that. They're low hanging fruit. It's fun, but
I do find it fascinating though. It's very fascinating that because I am fascinated on how people think and why they believe what they believe.
Yeah.
Right. But
do you know what I mean? It's like,
exactly.
And it's the stonewall approach that people have. It's like all or nothing. And I just find it fascinating.
I think the challenge for me, like even a poor argument, I find challenging, not in taking down the argument itself, but from my experience of having been a fundamentalist, the challenge to me is looking at how you can dissect it and then come up with a message that's going to be palatable or relevant to a fundamentalist themselves, like how to reach to them and say something that is going to help them somewhere on their journey of figuring out. In my case, it's going to be getting them away from fundamentalism. So to me, there's always an interesting puzzle there.
Have you come across Darth Dawkins?
Oh God,
I have not. See, that's one thing. There's a few things that
don't let him do it.
Wait, do you know? wait. Do you know the name, or you just have not come across him?
Evolution Falls is another one of his names.
Not even familiar with the name. See, that's one of the problems. Is I'm a little old and I have a lot of kids, so just getting a video out's hard. So I'm not really up on the conversation. So
Little old.
You've got about 2 years of homework you need to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of backstory there.
that's one thing I want to do is get, I want to follow up after this and find out who some of these people are and see if I can,
There's if you want to look at channels, look up Darwin's Greatest Hits.
Yeah, I was going to say Darwin's Greatest Hits.
Fantastic kind of chronology of his. And then if you go to the video on there entitled Questions.
Oh, I love that video.
There's
This is my question that starts
It's got me in it. It's got Steve in it. It's got a lot of us in it.
It's not even a question I asked.
Where we're trying to ask Darwin's questions, and he just isn't interested in answering. And it shows people getting really frustrated with him not answering questions.
One-sided Socratic method.
The video starts off with me explaining Darwin's modus operandi. That what he does is basically he won't.
That's right. You do.
Yeah, I explain it right. I'm explaining why that he just doesn't answer questions, and it's beautiful because he's like, "That's just completely wrong, Steve."
It's like you're a fucking prophet.
Everything afterwards is him not answering questions. It's beautiful. It's great.
I answer questions, Steve. I answer questions all the time.
Yeah.
Oh,
God.
17
and at the very end, Gus's
asking
takedown of him, it was just the most brutal invective I've ever heard in my entire life.
The reason why he doesn't go up against Dillahunty is he still wouldn't. I think a conversation with Darwin's and Dillahunty would be interesting just because I want to see what Dillahunty would do with him. It'd be like watching some kind of scavenger deal with a nut that's difficult to crack, just to see how he does it. But I think that the result of him being embarrassed by Dillahunty, because there's a likelihood of Dillahunty kind of figuring it out, would be really bad for him. It would be a type of embarrassment that would be played over and over again.
And then he goes hide for a little while. Then
I think he does get embarrassed because he disappears from the internet for months at a time, and then he comes back.
No, he's out there. He's not off the internet. He's just in different things like
Discord. Oh no, he goes to his safe spaces. Yeah. Okay, yeah. He goes to his
little jihadi training camps.
Right, and then he comes back, and then he gets his ass kicked again, and he goes and retreats again because Jack finds him or something like that, or he gets into an argument with me about Odin, or somebody else bumps into him and shows him his shit, or the fucking Psycho yells at him or something like that, and then he disappears for a long time.
Yeah. But Zod, you got a lot of catching up to do on that kind of stuff. It's so awesome.
This is basketball. You're gonna defense.
We're gonna play both sides of the court now.
Go binge watch Darwin's Greatest Hits.
I love that guy.
Are just it'll tell you all you need to know. What do you think? When you have a whole channel named after you, showing your how wrong you are,
how dumb you are over and over again.
Yeah, that's saying something. Yeah. There's only 2 people that I know have channels like that. Well, one's more of an archive channel, but yeah. So
I honestly don't think Dawkins is dumb. I think he's refined actually a very agile script on presupposition, because he can, for most people, move from left to right quite easily.
Yeah, no. I agree with that. If you're defining dumb as being able to do sophistry, then or not being being intelligent, because it does take skill to be.
I think that what Dawkins does is the reverse of street epistemology, in that it involves a very similar structure and takes advantage of a lot of the same kinds of things.
Yeah, like Socratic method.
Right. It's definitely Socratic method, but he's using it in a way to try and get the skeptic to become skeptical of their skepticism, whereas the street epistemology is trying to convert somebody into being more of a skeptic.
Oh, but says about Trey Jadlow versus Darth Dawkins.
In a physical fight or in a just yelling at each other match? Do they disagree with each other?
They would have to.
Yeah, because Jadlow is from the school of what is it, Sprawlian
R.C. Sproul. Yeah.
Yeah, the argumentation there.
D.D.'s Bonson. So yeah, that's not going to fly too well.
Because at the end of the day, Jadlow likes to consider himself an evidentialist, and doesn't.
Does?
And
yeah, they would yell at each other.
Oh, yeah.
Because
presuppositionalism or reformed epistemology. Oh yeah.
Especially as those guys are huge advocates for their positions there. Jadlow's actually come out several times just trashing presuppositionalists. Viewed it as an abhorrent style of argumentation or apologetics. Well, his argument, a lot of people confuse as presuppositionalism, but it's not. It's just like this huge contingency argument based off of philosophy that fell out of favor about 1,800 years ago.
But anyway, guys, I got to start wrapping this up because I want this to be easy to digestible. So
I was just going to do the Darth on Christians thing, which I always find funny, because anytime anyone is a Christian and disagrees with him, he'll go down the questioning line of, so, you claim you're a Christian then? May I ask you a couple of questions?
Oh,
And then I do
We
love
will
when
put the lotion in the basket. Sorry.
It's almost
No,
it's almost
what
like
he does-
can you prove that
Hang on.
atheism is a true and correct that kind of stuff? It's like, oh, shut up.
Some shock of
he
God.
does
Shock
this
of God
though.
shit,
He
yeah.
does this. Hang on. He does this. He does the ball is in the street. He does that. How do you know the ball is in the street? Have you not heard that one?
No.
Yeah, that's one of his. He's got about 7 different lines of attack. That
Was
It's
that
like-
always how do you know the ball's in the street or the ball is in the street at the same time kind of thing?
And then he's on about the dog.
it's
He's on
the-
about dog poo as well. He's on about dog poo and all sorts. It's like what
He
are
has
you
a really
talking about?
weird way
It's
of
like-
relating the law of non-contradiction to physical things in a metaphysical sense rather than a logical sense.
I just think he's not very self-aware because he should know that when he goes into his shtick, we've all heard it before. He should be very self-aware that when he's talking to a new person, we've heard this before, and everybody just turns off when he just goes into it.
Why do you think
He's not
I
doing-
won't engage him in other rooms?
Yeah, that's true. He's
And
not
I've said,
doing
look at
anything new.
Darwin's. I've talked to Darwin's numerous times. I said, Darwin's, look at, if you want to have this conversation, I'll open a room. You can come there, and we'll have anybody who wants to come in, the pal talkers, it doesn't matter, and we'll have this conversation. I have no problem because I've been there with him how many times? How many? You remember they go back in
that's what he
Nadia's
does
days.
like.
Ocean does. We've all been there, and so I'm not going to waste the time in a hangout where I know it's going to be modded. I know it's going to be shut down. I know that he's going to be able to like mute me and all this other stuff, and I'm not interested in that. Right? He needs to go to my channel or
scary thing-
Skylar's. Right? So
The scary thing is that MK is back, and I think he'll probably try and overtake MK again in his
I don't think
hangouts.
they're.
Is
they're
he back now?
Yeah.
He's,
What?
he is.
Yeah.
He's back
So then
as
Crazier
his
than ever.
channel. His channel is now Michael Klein.
Yeah.
So his name, his proper name.
Someone link me.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah.
from what I
It's in the.
understand.
It is in the
Hang out
GDC.
for some of
GDC.
some of the most dramatic shit. There's I saved the conversation where I went against Darwin's deity with the Odin objection was in an MK hangout, and I wound up downloading it before he deleted his channel. But it's
I was there.
it's a really you were.
Is that the one where he could
You
spew
were trying
lasers from his eyes, or was that a different hangout?
He got really, really angry at me. That's when I made the troll list. Was when I told him that that Odin is the wisest of gods and is therefore wiser than his god. And it's revealed to me that he exists. And then it's the reveal that he has had is in fact a lie because it was not given to him by Odin. And then he gets into a spat with me saying, "Is it possible for my god to lie?" He says, "Yes." He says, "Well, that's impossible for my god to lie." And I said, "Well, that's obviously a lie." At least my god is honest about the fact that he lies.
Yeah, no, I think that even the Christian God can lie if it's virtuous for him enough to do so.
I mean, that gets into omnipotence versus omnibenevolence, is whether or not that's a coherent concept to have both of them in one entity.
Yeah.
You can't
But-
be ultimately just and ultimately merciful. The
Yeah,
two
you
things
can't be
are
Right,
on-
You
right.
can't be omnibenevolent and omni
It's,
justice.
it's a contradiction. You know, justice is the suspension of mercy. Mercy is the suspension of justice.
That's a very naive view of mercy and justice.
Okay, we're not going to go down this route. Different hangout.
And here we
So
go.
here we go.
down
That's
the road
so if
of
somebody wants to do another hangout on the GDC community channel because you're all managers of it, and you guys want to talk about that particular hot subject, go for it. Have at it. And Ocean, your manager. Frank, your manager. Sokka, your manager. None of you guys know how to figure out how to do
Come
it yet.
join the
but it's not
Discord. I like to
complicated.
yell at people.
But be my guest if you want to go start that particular topic
wait.
on the other channel.
We
feel
can
like you
share
don't-
a link
we
to
can
the
go to Discord
Discord
after
in the fucking chat, can't we?
You could run it through Discord if you want. Sure. That takes a streaming thing to do though. Now I don't care.
No,
listen,
we'll just
nobody-
rant
hang
about
on.
it.
No, I'm saying that like the chat, the Discord exists. We should.
Yeah, but I
definitely-
mean, if you want to like make it so everybody can like listen to it, I don't mind if somebody does streaming video on the GDC community channel, if they want to run the Discord through it. But that's not an easy setup, and I just kind of hope that somebody who, if they do that, knows what the hell they're doing. Because streaming is not the same as just setting up a hangout and running it. It's not the same. Anyways, guys, let's wrap it up. Hey, Zod, dude, I appreciate you coming in and spending a little time with us. Sorry you got all over the place. It happens with the GDC.
No, it's all good. I appreciate you having me.
But we're gonna be promoting your channel just like we are some of the other channels. I'm gonna be on Holy Cooley's channel on Friday. I think it's like 5:30 my time or something along those lines. But going to be a huge event for that because it's just going to be me and Holy Cooley talking for about 20 minutes or so, and then I guess other people are going to come in, and I'm really looking forward to that because I got to tell you, Zod, it is a lot different hosting an event than it is being on the other end, like the guest. It's a little disconcerting, and I'm not going to say that I'm not a little on edge about this because he's got a big channel, right? But
yeah.
So I definitely know when when we invite guests in like you to come in and talk about their channel, it takes a special skill set. So you do have that ability, so that's awesome. So anything you want to say about your channel before I kind of stop the stream and remind everybody again, go subscribe to Prophet.
I want to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to say Happy Hanukkah to everybody.
Everybody else, Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.
Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah.
Dreidel, I made you out of clay.
Yeah.
I don't mind. I'll say Happy Christmas to everybody. Doesn't bother. I quite like Christmas.
That pagan holiday, Christmas.
What's now? What is it called? Samhain or
Samhain.
something at this time of year? Samhain.
All right,
Also, it was good meeting Prophet Zod over here.
Prophet
Yeah,
of
it's good meeting
Zod,
you all
take it
too.
away. Say what you got to say so I can end this.
I don't think I have
Thank you,
anything more to
listen.
add. I just appreciate you having me on and let me be part of the conversation.
Well, we look forward to much more of it, especially going into 2018. Like I said, I have predictions for these channels. Your goal on your channel, if you can get 3,000 by the end of next year, is that okay?
That'd be fantastic.
All right, well, that sounds like a reasonable goal. That's pretty much a little over twice what you have now. I think that's definitely doable. So with that, guys, thanks for watching this. Again, we're going to be with Holy Kool-Aid on Friday, and I think we got something else planned too, and I can't remember what it was, so you're just going to have to pay attention to the GDC for upcoming events. And with that, I am ending this. Good night, guys.